Recording in progress. All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, good evening. I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting for January 25th already to order. This is a regular meeting of the City of Milton Planning Commission. I'm Kurt Nolte, and this is a 7-member commission appointed by the City of Milton mayor and council members, created for the purpose of holding public hearings and making recommendations on rezoning, use permits, concurrent variance applications, comprehensive land use plan, and plan map and other related plans and amendments to the zoning ordinance. In attendance tonight, we have everyone except Fred is calling in or he's joining us online. So we have Commissioner Laura Wysong, Commissioner Trey James, Commissioner Ron Gilbert, Commissioner Samit Shah, Commissioner Judy Bird's all present. The petitions will be heard in the sequence listed on the posted agenda. I would like to acquaint you with some of the rules and procedures conducting this meeting. The applicant and all those in support of an application will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present the petition. The applicant may choose to save some of the time for rebuttal following the presentation by the opposition. The opposition will be allowed a total of 10 minutes to present its opposition. If time remains, the opposition will be allowed to rebut. Since the burden of proof is upon the applicant will be allowed to make closing remarks provided time remains with the allotted time. The staff of the Community Development Department will be keeping track of the time and will inform you periodically of the remaining time for your presentation. Each speaker must fill out a speaker card before speaking and leave it with a staff member of the Community Development Department. All speakers will identify themselves by name, address, and organization, if applicable, before beginning their presentation. When an opponent of, well, that's rezoning, we really don't have to go through that. Each application has been properly filed with the Department of Community Development. Signs have been posted on each site. The matter has been advertised and the notices have been mailed to property owners affected by the zoning required by the Milton zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission's recommendation will be forwarded to the City of Milton mayor and council for final disposition on approximately 5 weeks on the first Monday of each month at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. The Community Development Department has reviewed each application in conjunction with various agencies and departments, both internal and external to the city. Staff's recommendations, findings, and conclusions are before us in written form, which has been made available to all petitioners and to the public. Demonstration of any sort in the chambers is prohibited, so please refrain from any applause, dialogue with the person speaking, or outburst. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silence. All remarks will be addressed by the Planning Commission. Please show the same level of respect for the person speaking that you would expect to receive yourself. In addition, the applicant shall not submit material to the Planning Commission during the meeting unless requested to do so by the Commission. All material that you wish to be reviewed by the Commission is in consideration of your application should be submitted to the staff of Community Development Department to be included in the normal distribution of packages to the Commission. Finally, to the applicant, if your petition is deferred in accordance, you need to obtain a new sign for reposting. Failure to update the repost will result in further delay. There are no exceptions. So a call for general public comment will be limited to 2 minutes per person, not to exceed 14 minutes. So I guess, is there any public comment or is there? There's not? Okay. Then I believe the next item on the agenda is the election of officers. Do we have any discussion? Do we have any? Okay, do we have any motion nominations?
Are you opening it up for chair?
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Kurt Nolte.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Well, first of all, thank you guys. I think it's gonna be a good year. We got a lot to do. And I appreciate the trust you've placed in me. So now we have the election of a vice chairperson.
Can I confirm that that was a 6-0 vote?
Okay.
If you can just announce the vote, just to make sure, since it's a
Can I
voice
vote?
vote.
Can I vote for myself?
You absolutely can.
Well, make it 5-1. Let's just, no. 6-0 is fine. I'm sorry. Okay, now election officers for the chair, for the vice chair.
I'd like to nominate Ron Gilbert.
Okay, I'll second. All right, all in favor of Ron as vice chair, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nope, 6-0, it's unanimous for Ron. Welcome, I'm gonna be gone for the first 3/4 of the year, so good for you. So the next,
Thank you, Kurt.
so the next item is the consideration of the minutes from the December 21st meeting.
I'd like to move to approve the minutes as submitted from Wednesday, December 21st.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous, also 6-0. So now the next item is the consideration of the use permit application U22-04.
So I just want to let you all know, this is Michael Carterman. He's been before you before, but he actually wrote the report and I'm going to be doing the presentation, so don't be too hard on him,
sorry.
okay?
Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Robin.
Thanks for pointing that out. We'll be expressively hard on him.
Right.
We've been waiting for this.
Yeah.
Do a 180.
Comments?
No, welcome.
Oh, we'll start.
All right. Good evening, Planning Commission. Good evening. The night before you is U22-04 Indoor Assembly Hall / Indoor Auditorium Use Permit, Section 641846. The applicant is Something Weddings and Events LLC by Lisa Chandler. The site is 3.88 acres in size for the whole development. The existing use is in a 3-story mixed-use building that is currently under construction. And the request is for a use permit to operate an assembly hall / indoor auditorium not to exceed 150 attendees within 4,000 square feet on the 3rd floor of a 3-story mixed-use building, which, as I stated, is currently under construction. Here's the location map showing the site, and I'll expand more on the surrounding uses in a slide later in the presentation.
Okay.
Here's the current zoning map and 2040 future land use map. The whole development is split between T5 zone to the west and T4 open zone to the east. The proposed mixed-use building under construction, where Something Wedding and Events will be located, is completely in the T5 zone. Here is the site plan submitted on November 29th, 2022, and the location of the building under construction is highlighted in yellow right here. And here is page 2 of the site plan, and this is the T4 open zone. And this really paints a picture to see the excess of parking that is here on the other side of the development. And here are the elevations submitted on November 29th, 2022. So here's some background and some details in the request. The applicant plans to open a high-end wedding and events venue business in this space. Meals, if provided, will be by a licensed catering service. No cooking will happen on site. The majority of the facility will be an open ballroom space, able to have a ceremony and then be changed into a seating reception area with a dance floor. Amplified music will only be played inside the facility. The events are expected to be primarily on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, with guests arriving at approximately 5 p.m. and concluding at 11 p.m. The applicant's intent is to only allow one event per day on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. The applicant has obtained permission from Fulton County Schools to use parking lots to shuttle in guests from these Fulton County School parking areas. And any event during that week that would involve more than 40 guests would be limited to starting after Fulton County school hours are in session. And we'll expand more on that later in the presentation. Community zoning information meeting. On December 20th, 2022, the applicant was present at the CZIM held at City Hall at 7 p.m., and there was no one in attendance regarding this item. City of Milton Design Review Board meeting courtesy review, which happened on January 3rd of this year. 4 of the DRB members present at the meeting expressed support for the use and recommended approval of the use permit. They expressed positive comments from the applicant's creative plan on meeting sufficient parking for guests through shuttling in guests from Fulton County school parking areas, and also providing the attendees with ride share vouchers. Public participation report. The applicant held the public participation meeting on December 28th, 2022 at City Hall, Community Place from 7 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. There was no one in attendance for the meeting or received any feedback from interested citizens. Staff comments. Since the building and the development already exists, there are no additional requirements from the arborist, Public Works Department, or from the land development engineer. The building permit for the shell of the building has been approved where the proposed assembly hall indoor auditorium is located. So when the interior building permit is submitted, then that will be reviewed by the fire marshal. Environmental site analysis. The applicant has addressed the various issues outlined in the ESA report. Site plan considerations. The existing building meets all development standards and required the T5 transit zone. And as I spoke earlier, half of the parking lot to the east is in the T4 open zone, but the building where the use permit is where the consideration applies. Assembly hall, indoor auditorium, a building or portion of a building for public rental for the purpose of private events, whether family, group, or corporate in nature, where access by the general public is restricted, and with or without the sale, serving, or consumption of food or alcoholic beverages. Assembly hall indoor auditorium shall not include a restaurant. Here are the site plan considerations. And the applicant is proposing a maximum of 150 attendees, and we'll expand on the hours of operation and the use permit considerations in the following slides. The proposed use is in the T5 land use category on the City of Milton 2040 Comprehensive Plan map in the Crabapple Form-Based Code. The proposed use permit for an assembly hall indoor auditorium is permitted within the T5 Transact Zone. In addition, the adopted 2040 Comprehensive Plan states that T5 Urban Center consists of higher density mixed-use buildings that accommodates retail, office, row houses, and apartments. In addition, wide sidewalks, street trees, plantings, and buildings are close to the sidewalk. Therefore, the proposed use is consistent with the land use plan adopted by Mayor and City Council based on the fact the proposed use is located within a building and development that's consistent with its recognition development pattern. While the entire building at 3000 Heritage Walk is located in T5 zone, the 3.88 acre site for the Market District of Crabapple is split between T5 zoning and T4 open zoning. The subject site is compatible with adjacent and nearby land uses. And actually, let me continue verbally, but I want you guys to look at the map while I read this so you can kind of see the picture I'm painting. While the entire building at 3000 Heritage Walk is located in T5 zoning, the 3.88 acre site is split between T5 zone and T4 open zone. The subject site is compatible with adjacent and nearby land uses and zonings, which include a mix of retail, office, include general and medical related, service that include a salon, a coffee shop, and a physical therapy business and restaurants. These uses are all located with the T5 Transact Zone. Location to the south across from Heritage Walk and to the west across from Birmingham Highway are all Zone T5 Transact Zone and are all developed as office uses and gardens. And you can see the garden right here from the aerial right here. To the east is T4 open zone, where you can see a lot of the parking and the other development that is proposed here, which is another building. And farther east is the location of the Lakeside at Crabapple subdivision. And to the north, finally, is a civic building site, which is the location of Crabapple Crossing Elementary School. The proposed use does not appear to violate any ordinance or regulations governing land development. Since the streets and sidewalks already exist and were designed to accommodate the number of size of mixed-use buildings, there will be minimal effect on traffic flow, vehicular and pedestrians along the adjoining streets. The 296 parking spaces shown on page 1 and 2 of the site plan are located within the entire development. This includes 194 surface parking spaces, 94 structured parking spaces, and 8 on-street parking spaces. There are no specific parking standards for this use, but the general requirement within the form-based code is 3.5 parking spaces for 1,000 square feet. The 4,000 square feet detail comes out to 14 parking spaces. Now, I know what you're thinking, only 14 spaces? So that's where it comes in, where we were kind of suggesting more parking standards, and the applicant is going above and beyond with their plan with Fulton County to do the additional parking for shuttling in guests. In order to lessen the impact of the use of associated parking, the applicant plans providing parking for guests through the shuttling and through Fulton County parking areas and providing attendees with rideshare vouchers. The applicant has received permission for Fulton County Schools to rent parking areas as needed unless other Fulton County school activities are scheduled. Based on the applicant's plan for parking, it appears there will be sufficient parking for this use. And here's the email that we received from the applicant detailing from Fulton County Schools organization that they are approved to move forward with this parking agreement. The proposed use is within an existing building that is part of a mixed-use development that contains 3.88 acres that has provided the requirement minimum open space requirement of 5%, with 11,375 square feet of open space. And the open space is located farther east within the development. It's on the southeast corner of the development, just outside the parking. Protective screening. The proposed use is in an existing building that is part of an overall mixed-use development that does not require any protective screening, as a form-based code does not require screening between uses or parcels in this area. Hours and manner of operation. The applicant has indicated they will comply with hours and manner of operation required within the standards of the use permit, but are proposing the following. Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and all weekday events end at 9 p.m. and vendor cleanup is completed by 10 p.m. Friday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., and Saturday and Sunday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. And all weekend events end at 10 p.m. and again, another hour for vendor cleanup to be completed by 11 p.m. Outdoor lighting. The proposed use is within a building under construction that is part of an overall mixed-use development, which has been approved by the city through the land disturbance permit process, including required lighting on the site as the adjacent properties. Ingress and egress. The building under construction is located at the northwest side of Birmingham Highway and Heritage Walk intersection. There is existing full access onto Heritage Walk that provides sufficient access to the property. In conclusion, the proposed Assembly Hall Indoor Auditorium use permit is consistent with the City of Milton 2040 Comprehensive Plan and map and consistent with the use permit considerations. Therefore, staff recommends approval conditionally of U22-04. And here are the recommended staff conditions. Number one, to the owner's agreement to strict use of the subject property as follows. Restrict the use of 3000 Heritage Walk, Suite 301 to an assembly hall / indoor auditorium. B, restrict the total square footage of the assembly hall indoor auditorium at 3000 Heritage Walk, Suite 301 to 4,000 square feet. C, restrict the maximum number of attendees of the Assembly Hall Indoor Auditorium to 150. D, days and hours of operation shall be limited to the following: Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. All weekday events end at 9 p.m. and vendor cleanup by 10 p.m. Friday, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. And finally, Saturday and Sunday, 9 a.m. to 11 p.m. and all weekend events end at 10 p.m. and vendor cleanup completed by 11 p.m. Number 2, to the owner's agreement to abide by the following: substantial compliance with the site plan received by Community Development Department on November 29, 2022, whereby the exact layout of the project may contain minor deviations approved by the Community Development Director, provided the deviations remain consistent with the purpose and intent of council's approval of the use permit. Notwithstanding the contents of the site plan, the project must meet or exceed the requirements of the zoning ordinance, all other applicable city ordinances, and these conditions prior to the approval of a land use permit. The site plan may be revised with the approval of the Community Development Director in order to comply with the city codes and zoning conditions. Unless otherwise noted herein, compliance with all conditions shall be in place prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. Any questions for staff?
Michael, can you expound on the neighbors? I think you've mentioned in the T5, there's a variety of commercial, 3 of which probably will have heavy evening use, 2 restaurants and an existing venue. And then what is going in the T4 open? Is that residential? Is it office space?
So I'll pinch hit here a little bit. So the developer is kind of over the years have changed their plans for that eastern section. Originally, it was for senior housing that would have to be for sale, and that is not going to occur. So now they're proposing buildings along Heritage Walk for a combination of retail / restaurants. And I believe that they will have rental units on the top 3. So,
Some sort of residential.
mhm.
Yeah, under current uses for the site, we currently have a restaurant there. We have a steakhouse that's going to be opening soon. I believe there's a salon. Starbucks is there. I believe I covered all of them.
There's a yoga, there's a burger place going in.
Community Burger. Yes,
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's going to be 3 total restaurants in that vicinity.
4 technically.
4? Okay.
Well, 3, yeah.
Yeah,
Plus
and there may be
basement.
more restaurants in the second
In the
part in
T4.
T4. Yeah, yeah. And then there's some consulting firms. I think there's a couple financial firms, and I do believe there is one residence at the top of the building 1 where Starbucks is.
And this might be a better question for the applicant. Is there any balcony or rooftop access from the 3rd floor?
So there is the way the owner's designing the building, there is rooftop access, and we've spoken to the applicant about that events can't occur there, but that's not to say that people can't go up there and have a view and, have a drink up there. But the events or the weddings are not going to happen on the rooftop, so.
Are the timeframes for like shutdown at night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, is that commensurate with the other businesses in the area? Or is there what's the logic in the timelines?
Well, I think that that's what their business model is. I will say that, there is Billy Allen's that are technically open until 2 a.m. And then I'm not sure what the steak restaurant will be, but typically that would be open on the weekends, 10, 11 o'clock at night once they start operating. So
Is there some reason that we would want to set the bar higher for them in terms of making them shut down sooner than the other adjacent
that's something
restaurants?
you can speak to the applicant when they get their opportunity to come up. So.
Okay.
But per the use permit, do we have a restriction on time?
So within the use permit there is, it's up to 11 o'clock. That's what we allow by right. So that's what she's conforming to, is the parameters that are set out by the use permit.
This is probably going to be, we don't know, but do you know how many parking spots the City of Milton Friendship Park is currently permitted to use out of Crabapple Elementary?
I do not.
And do we know how many parking spots there are at Crabapple Elementary, either in front of the gate or behind the gate?
We could look it up. I can look at an aerial and see.
So I had a question about the T5 and the T4. So the use permit is allowed in T5, correct?
Right. Mhm.
But then this building is, the building is partially T4 and T5?
No, the building's completely in T5. It's
Okay.
just the entrance, the whole development encompasses both the T4 open and T5, but the building's entirely, and half of that site is in the T5. So it's not straddling the building at all. It's just the development in general.
So, I mean, is that anything that we have to take into consideration? The fact that part of the development is T4 and this use permit is going to allow attendees through T4 into T5?
So it's only specific to Building 300 or 3000 Heritage Walk, Suite 301. That's what the use permit is for, just for that suite. So a building next door can't claim the same use permit, or the second floor can't claim the same use permit. This is very specific just to that 4,000 square foot area.
Okay.
It's just because the building sits on a complete development, we couldn't just ignore what was around it as far as discussion, for discussion purposes, so.
Yeah, I was just trying to understand like the purpose of why that was kind of brought out in the presentation.
It's more because of its overall development that, it's part of the general development, and counting the parking spaces, the potential parking spaces, we wanted to make sure that that was pointed out, so.
So does this building have like specific area for delivery and, things like that's going to happen with, I don't know, are they planning on like keeping all of the tables and chairs and all that stuff in the venue, or is it going to be
So
coming
that's
in
something
and
you can
out?
ask the applicant, so I don't know the exact answer to that, so.
But so what about this building though? Do we know, like, is there a specific area where
A loading
delivery's gonna-
dock or loading
Yeah.
area, I would have to look at the architectural plans to see. I mean, I imagine there's a loading area, but I don't know that for sure, but I'll
And
look.
then like, what about a drop-off area for this whole shuttling idea? How is that gonna work too, if you've got ride shares and shuttles and whatever's going on to try to get
Right.
people in
I
and
mean, I
out?
know there are some on-street parking where I could imagine that the ride share could come and pick them up in front of the building and not even get into the inside of the parking lot. But again, the applicant may have more details on that, because she's the one who's putting together the business plan. But I'll look for the architectural plans and see how that works with deliveries and everything.
So I assume the building has elevator access?
It does, yes.
Okay, and what's the load capability for that, and how many?
Again, I'm not familiar with the size of the elevators and all that, but the applicant can probably address that since,
So, and in terms of the building being under construction, is there any other permitting that needs to be done or needs to be approved to make sure that the square footage is only 4,000 or less?
right, so she already has a signed lease with the owner, but she is preparing the interior building plans. And at that point, we're going to review the interior building plan. So that's something that we can ensure that it doesn't exceed 4,000 square feet. Yes.
Michael, can I go back on your staff packet, page 8 of 16, on the development standards for use permits, 64, 1946 subsection B1, so the use permit as stated for an assembly hall indoor auditorium are Sunday through Thursday, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 7 to 11. That's the stated use permit, correct?
The hours of operation?
Yes.
Yes.
And the applicant is seeking a variance beyond those hours?
No,
Because they
they're,
want to be open Sunday till 11?
so if you just go off of the allowed uses from the chart from our code, they're allowed, so it's Friday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. And they're actually, essentially, that's up to interpretation, but they're closed and everyone's gone. So they wouldn't need a variance because they're closed to the public. It'd just be the vendors cleaning up. So that's our interpretation, that no variance would be needed because they're technically closed at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, but it's till 11, so long as all their cleanup and everybody's closed by 11, then they're in conformance with what is permitted by the use permit.
Well, no, Sunday is
Except on
10.
Sundays.
and they're asking
Sundays
for-
at 10, yes.
Yeah, Mike, I know the spirit of this for the Sunday through Thursday is you want everybody gone so that people aren't, hey buddy, I'll see you tomorrow, slamming car doors when there's residential not too far away, because some of the workers may park near the residential. So the idea is that the 10 p.m. on Sunday was it like other nights of the week are work school nights. So to me, it says 10, and if they wanted 11, they should have applied for a variance, not this, well, it's subject to interpretation. It says 10. If they wanted 11, I think they should have applied for a variance concurrent with the use permit.
I think that's a good point.
So I think that's an issue you can ask the applicant to make sure that she would be in agreement that everything would be cleaned up. Everybody would be out by 10.
Because as I see it, either they need to start over and ask for the use permit with a concurrent variance for Sunday till 11, or we can just write it to say Sunday at 10, or recommend that to the city council. Paul, your thoughts on that?
Honestly, where it's an interpretation, I would need to discuss it with the planning, community development director and find out,
Okay.
and, look at the exact wording and discuss with him his take on it. So I can't really tell you which way to go on it, whether they need it or not. It's his interpretation to the extent it's subject to interpretation. Which section I can. Go.
The rest of my questions are for the applicant.
Anybody else have any questions for staff?
I do.
Okay.
I just,
I do.
not to confuse things and make things more difficult, I just confirmed with the applicant that they're going to have the event end at 9 and then be out of the building completely by 10. So there's no need to look for a variance. There's no need, yeah. So and we can make sure that the condition states that, so.
So Sunday through Thursday, done at 9, out by 10. And
Yes.
Friday and Saturday, done by 10, out by 11.
Yeah,
Okay.
Michael, in your use permit, you restrict them to 150 people on Saturday, Sunday, so forth, in the evenings. Elsewhere in the documents that you provided us, there was, the applicant indicated they were going to restrict their attendance at daytime activities to 40 persons. Why did you choose not to include that as a condition to the use permit?
we can always add that. That's totally fine.
Okay.
It was an oversight. That's fine.
That
We
would
can
be,
amend that.
that would be one of the things that
Yeah.
I'll
No
suggest.
problem.
Are you conversant in the Fulton County Schools email, or should I hold that for the applicant?
Yeah, I think it'd be a better question for the applicant to
Okay.
expand on that.
And then,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious why Do the other businesses in the area have they made variances or applied for variances for later times?
No, I mean, different use, so there aren't really any maximum times other than for Billy Allen's. It's considered the type of alcohol they have. They're allowed to be open till 2 a.m. And then the remainder of the businesses are just whatever they deem
Choose.
appropriate for their business to open and close. So,
While I'm for noise abatement, especially for the residents, it seems like we're kind of putting the applicant in a box to limit times when the other businesses don't have limitations, which I think the burden falls on our law enforcement to do something that's abnormal, possibly. I don't know how that works, if they're having to be mindful of the use permit. I guess my question is, why wouldn't we apply standard code to their operations versus including it in their permit?
so when we created the use permit for this use, it went through, different discussions. It went through the planning commission, and there's a lot of discussions also with the city council about the times of operation. And that's what a use permit is. Sometimes use permits, it's just an extra layer of accountability and requirements. So it's not unheard of for a use permit to require certain days and hours of operation. So it's just what it is. So, yeah.
Okay.
I would agree. I mean, optics look strange. That's all I'm saying. I mean, you got one business over there doing this, you got them doing something else. And I mean, residents they don't care about that. They're just going, okay, why A versus B? I mean,
I think, Laura, for me, it's a matter of process, that the use permit allows them this and they applied for this use permit. If they wanted later hours, they should have asked for a variance along concurrent with the use permit. And I probably would have been like, the neighbors are open to midnight, 11's fine.
Yeah.
But they didn't follow that process. If they wanted to come back for a variance to get extended hours later, they could, but they didn't apply for the variance on the hours concurrent with the use permit. So technically, I think we can only hear the use permit with the conditions stated in the use permit and no variances.
I'm just,
Unfortunately, that's the process.
yeah, no, I get it, but I think there's,
But I think they've pulled
Optical
they've pulled the
issues.
variance, I believe, haven't they?
Yeah, they have now, but
Correct.
to their point about why can't we have it later, they didn't technically apply for that variance. If they had, I think we could consider it, but they didn't.
Yeah.
different standards.
Also, I know it states in here, amplified music will only be played inside the facility. I'm assuming, even with the access to the rooftop, there won't be speakers or any amplified music up on the rooftop, and all the lighting. I mean, they're subject to all the standard lighting, outdoor lighting type of restrictions, or whatever you want to call
Right.
it.
And there will be no, DJ tables or anything. It will just, somebody can walk up and take their drink up. Nothing like the indoor
No
facility.
formal events are permitted up on the rooftop. So,
Okay. Yeah, because again, I think we do have to be mindful of the residents, especially they're putting in the, right next door to that in the T2 thing. So,
Yeah.
All right. Anybody have any other questions for staff?
Just for my own personal understanding. So let's say 11:30, the party's still going. What happens?
what happens if they go past the time? Well, first of all, there would probably have to be a complaint because we're not out there at every
Sure.
event. But let's say if we get a complaint about it, then, we like to speak to the offender and say, please stop that. And if they keep on doing it, then we'll give them a notice of violation. And then after that, we'll give them a citation. But
Okay.
yeah, that's kind of the process. We try to be nice in the beginning and correct them and then
That's-
go from there. So.
That's what I wanted to hear.
It's
Awesome.
also my understanding they don't, because their caterers bring in alcohol, they don't need a liquor license. Is that correct?
Right, so usually the caterers have their own liquor license,
Okay,
yes.
that's-
Mhm. And pouring license, so.
All right. Any other questions for staff?
Let's see.
All right, the applicant, please.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hi.
Oh, you
I'm
can
Lisa
give it to them,
Chandler,
like, while
and
she's talking.
this is my husband, Craig Chandler. I may need him to hear for me because I'm having a little hearing issue.
Thank you.
Thanks. Then I think you technically have to state your address also. I think you
Oh,
technically have to
It's
name and address.
3000 Heritage Walk, Milton 30004,
Thank you.
and we're in Suite 301. So I'm not sure how this goes. Do you want
Well,
to ask me questions, or should I?
It depends. If you have something to start out with, if you'd like to say anything, fine. Otherwise, we can ask questions.
Okay.
It's pretty informal, hopefully, and
Okay, so the document that he just gave you was an email that I received from the valet service provider. They are going to accommodate us on 80 to 100 parking spaces. They've already worked out their deal with a local business to provide parking for us. And also in our packages is already built in Uber and Lyft vouchers, which we think is going to be very appealing to a lot of our guests, especially the younger people. The more seasoned people will want to either valet or self-park, but we think that with the valet and the vouchers, will eliminate any parking issues.
okay, so this is in addition to whatever Fulton County Schools that agreement is. This is in addition to that.
Yes, so
This
I'm
is separate.
actually, we have approval to use any of Fulton County schools. So let's say the local schools are not available, then we can keep going until we get to one that is available for any date. And when I get an inquiry, what I will do is I will go into the system, make sure the date is available, apply for it. And if it is not, we just keep going to a different school until we get to one if we need to. But I'm not thinking that we're going to even need to with the Uber vouchers, because I think that's going to be very attractive to our clients.
And we're hoping now with our valet service that has now come online and said they think they can accommodate to take care of all that with the vouchers, which will be very beneficial for like I say, a lot of the people that are going to be coming to these events. We think we can cover most of our parking with that. Because honestly, at a wedding event, you're looking at 150 people, probably 75 cars. We got a valet that's saying they can go between 80 and 100. They're currently working right now to get everything lined up for us, but obviously our expected open date is somewhere around June. But with the vouchers as well, we can build those into the service, and then we can scale those up or scale those down based upon kind of who they expect to come to their event. Are they expecting an older crowd, which may not be willing to use Uber, or a younger crowd, which absolutely would love to have an Uber to get them there and back safely? Also, there may be a question you have. We've already reached out to the Milton Police Department and talked to them about being able to provide an off-duty officer for security to make sure that the event is run correctly. If there's any concerns or problems, whether they're inside or they're outside, I know obviously noise, music, we'll have them on site with us to help us make sure that we're in compliance with all ordinances. And as well as dealing with any problems that may happen there. In addition to Milton, if Milton for some reason is unable to provide an officer, there are officers. Fulton County has a plethora of law enforcement agencies between the school police, which we have direct contact with, the marshal services, the sheriff's office, and the Fulton County Police Department as well. Those are all agencies that we will use. We'll make sure that we have an officer on duty while we're having these events.
A question with regard to the arrangement with the Fulton County schools. In the document that was part of our package, excuse me, one of the first rules for renters is We do not rent Fulton County facilities during holiday breaks. That suggested to me that the parking facility there might not be available, so let's say during the summer months when you're going to be doing your opening. So is that a correct interpretation, that it's not going to be open during the summer or available to you during the summer or during those other spring and fall
Certain
breaks?
Schools may not be. It kind of depends on where they're running summer school.
Mhm.
But that's one of the reasons that we've also reached out to the valet service. And that's kind of our goal right now with the news we got today is our primary is the valet and the vouchers, with a secondary backup plan being the schools. And then again, we can kind of, depending on who's got the summer school for the Fulton County school system, those are a little more available. We'll have to work around those things. And that's,
But would they be available during the summer? Whether they if they did not have any activities there, would that be available during the summer? Because it says here it's not going to be available during breaks.
some of that is going to be dependent upon the principal. The principal holds a lot of authority over when the school is and when the school isn't.
Okay.
So that's something that we'll have to work through to get all the specifics. And
Is that how you're currently operating now? Is that how you're currently operating now with your other facility?
well, we don't have another event space.
Oh, okay.
My wife has a wedding and decor, flowers, coordination, and things like that. So we go to other event locations.
Gotcha.
Yes.
It was made mention in one of the documents that we had that you have previously utilized churches as a place for the overflow parking.
Yes.
Have you, there's a church right up the street from the school. Have you reached out to them to talk with them about possibly using their space?
Yes, we're discussing it with them. It's not necessarily their preference,
Mhm.
but money tends to motivate.
So, yes, I am actually reaching out to multiple places and businesses just so that we kind of have overkill.
I
Just to
think-
make sure that in the event that any place is not available, we've got another option right at our fingertips. So I'm actively I'm actually meeting with someone next week, myself and my tenant representative, so that we can talk about this with them.
I think that's very important because in the area where you're going to be, there is, as we've mentioned, Billy Allen's is there. It operates in the evening when you're going to be operating. There's an Aberdeen restaurant that's going in. It's going to be, its activity will be focused in the evening hours as well. And there's a number of parking places. And I think I like the notion of the Fulton County Schools because it's right on the other side of the fence. But if that's not available, you need to have a fallback. And while you seem very confident about Uber and Lyft, I'm less convinced. But then I'm one of the old folks that I think you referenced earlier in your comments. So from my perspective, I'd like to see some redundancy there. And so if you could come back with or develop a relationship with the church or another place that has ample parking for you and develop your parking strategy a little more, I think that would be very helpful.
Yes, sir. That's the meeting she's talking about next week, is with a different place that has parking that could suffice our needs.
Okay. All right.
Thank
Thank you.
I agree. I had the same questions, especially when you look at the football games where on Friday nights where they rent out their parking lot. We have to pay to park in the public parking, but that's a whole different subject, or Saturday sporting events, any extra activities. So I think the executive parking systems was a great move. I think that alleviates at least a good portion of my concern about parking. If you've got 80 to 100 there, and then you've got, whatever is available around the area here. So that, I like that one. That was a good move.
Well, where is executive parking going to park the car?
They've had an agreement with the parking lot across the street because they used to do some of Billy Allen's parking for him.
Oh,
And they're using some of their resources and their connections to reach out to some of these other facilities around to see if they can negotiate contracts with them as well.
okay.
I'd like to speak to the delivery issue, because I looked at the building plans. There's nothing that's like very obvious that there's a delivery area of the building. Can you just talk about your plan for delivery of items and?
Okay, so what I do know is that there's going to be an underground area where they can go under the building and come up the elevator. And so that would be my plan. My preference is to have them unseen when they're making deliveries. And so that's really it, is for them to go to the underground.
As far as the capacity of the elevators, I know you asked about that. I don't know the exact standard elevators for personnel. We don't anticipate bringing in anything overly heavy. I mean, it'll be caterers bringing in trays. We will have a warming oven and a cooler already on site for them to bring those trays to and put in. But just your standard operating elevator is what's there.
So for guests, that was, I guess, more my question is, guests getting up, how many elevators are?
Estimates, there's one elevator, estimate 10 to 12 people per elevator ride.
Yeah, that's kind of limited with 150
There's
people.
also stairs. I mean, obviously there's internal stairs and there's external stairs
Okay.
for those that feel so brave, but
This is on the third floor, right?
yes, sir.
Third floor.
Yeah, that would kind of limit other
And if the
people
deliveries
using.
are happening, I mean, if the, the setup and the deliveries all are happening and potentially they're using the elevators.
The deliveries would occur before the guests start getting there so that everything's there. By the time the guests show up, the majority of the delivery stuff is done, and then you just have the staff that's going to be putting out the plates or plating the food and putting it out to the guests. And then they'll come back at the end of the night once the guests are gone so that they can come in, clean up, gather their things, and then leave.
So your plan is kind of, let's just say, we're talking about some of these times, 10 PM, all the guests are out, and from 10 to 11 is when the breakdown is going to happen and everything's out and everybody's out by 11 o'clock.
All the
Yes.
tables and chairs will be ours and be there. So they're just bringing in the food or the plates and utensils and things like that. And then they'll load all those up. We do not provide them a place to wash all their dishes and stuff, so they'll load that.
Great. Thank you for finding yet another alternative to the schools, because I've dealt with them on parking before, and having an alternative is a good thing, and would suggest, I believe as someone else did, to look at yet another possibility, even though generally one should do it. I unfortunately live somewhere where Uber doesn't serve, so that is not an option for me. Welcome to Milton. North of Ron doesn't get Uber. And just for clarifications, while you have rooftop access, you do not plan to serve up there, play music up there, really operate up there. If somebody goes up to have a cigar or a cigarette,
Yes, ma'am.
so be it, but you're not.
The
Going
ordinance
up
is
there.
very clear, the ordinance does state the times. And we are 100% to obey the times as set forth by the ordinance. Another reason we'll have the police there to make sure that people leave when they're supposed to leave, and then all of our folks are going when they're supposed to go.
How long, so you're leasing this space, how long is your lease?
10 years.
10 years?
And what we're hoping for is a lot of our guests are going to end up at Billy Allen's or at the steakhouse, or we can work deals with them to maybe even cater some of the food. We're really hoping to be a good citizen to all the people around us, and we can all kind of share in the benefits of bringing these folks here into Milton.
I did see that too, where you're offering packages from like Muckies and the area, Starbucks and that. I think it's great to help out the
Yes.
local businesses.
I've been in
also.
talks with all of them that we're planning on working with, and to offer, there's barbers and salons and the yoga place and Starbucks. And we have talked to the people across the street at Milton's, the restaurant. And so I think we've gotten a good welcome as far as them wanting to work with us on our catering and things like that.
Excellent.
So just to clarify the whole hours of operation kind of discussion, Because I know during the presentation, I didn't see like vendor cleanup by 10 PM, let's say Friday and Saturday, so that, everybody's out by 11, including all vendors. So could you just clarify again, kind of what you're anticipating the hours of operation is going to be so that we can make sure it just aligns with what's allowed for the use requirements right now?
Yes, sir. If I read the ordinance correctly, it says that on Friday and Saturday, you're allowed to be open to 11 in an event hall like we're asking for. We will have the event completed at 10, and then that last hour will be for cleanup and everyone gone by 11. Sunday through Thursday, I believe it's supposed to end by 10 o'clock. So we will have the events, any events that happen on those days will be done by 9, and then we will have the cleanup done by 10 o'clock.
I just want to let you know too that, Tracy, there's 132 parking spaces at Crab Apple. But yeah, lot, yeah.
And you still have your eyesight. I have some questions for Robin, Paul, Michael, but none more for the applicant.
Any more for the applicant at all? Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, good job.
Done.
Thank you.
So Michael and Robin and Paul, since a lot of the concerns seem to be more about the ending time and they've agreed to comply with the standard hours for the ending time, do we have any, and they're willing to open later, but do we need to state it as a condition, or can we just let the use permit hours stand as stated on page 8? Sunday through Thursday, 7 to 10, Friday and Saturday, 7 to 11, which is actually more than they wanted in the morning, but then we don't need to condition it. So in other
So
words,
it is in the conditions on page 15.
what I'm saying is strike the conditions.
I'm sorry.
Strike the
You
conditions.
could, I mean, you could strike it and it would default to the
The
hours
standard.
that are in the use permit.
Right.
Yeah.
And then if they wanted to extend the hours, if they found with their operations that was just, they can come back for a variance and say, hey, can you give me another hour or another half
Yeah, they
an
would have to
hour?
go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, yes.
Yep, they can go to the BZA to
Yeah.
extend the hours. But that way, it's just clean. It is, you get a use permit with standard hours.
Yeah.
We don't have to condition them.
I mean, typically, my experience is that most applicants,
They
they
don't
want to be
have
good stewards and they want to do the least impactful as possible that works with their business plan, so.
Right, they don't have to open at 7 o'clock on a
No, right,
Sunday. But they may
exactly. I know,
find,
I know.
like, there's another place that found that they wanted to do morning Bible study classes and they wanted that flexibility. So I'd be more, I know they were willing to shorten it, but just keep it to this. They wanted a use permit, give them the use permit, keep it. My second question becomes, how do we somehow write the wording that they need to maintain adequate parking? It's currently not a condition, though they seem to be willing to do it, but something that says that they will have provisions for off-site parking if attendance exceeds 40 people, or can we, how do we, what's the best way to write that condition?
Well, we can't make anyone off the property obligated to do anything. We can make them acquire, condition on them acquiring the right to make use of a certain number of spaces or whatever.
Their lease provides 14 spaces, right?
Right, that's just a general
Yeah.
3.5 per 1,000. And you do the multiplication, that's what it is, which obviously is not enough for this type use. We don't have a specific criteria for this use, so that's something we can look at. But I don't know, other than, can we write it like if it exceeds 40 people, the app, applicant shall provide parking off-site? I mean, can we say something?
I mean, if you tell me what you want to do, we can make it, write it, and we'll say they shall provide parking as such, whatever way you want them to do it.
Yeah, because I think what we're trying to get avoid, this could, if this went away, September, then we'd be locked into that. So how do we do that? I guess we're trying to say that they'll continue to provide ample parking or parking for.
Let me just say that, I mean, that they shall provide sufficient off-site parking to provide them with X number of spaces, period. I mean, you don't care where it is, if you do or if you don't. Or if you want, heard the alternatives with Uber and all that, and however you would like to do it, just tell them that's what they have to do. And if it's just, I want to make sure that you're providing X number of spaces off-site or total, including those that are on-site, however you want to word it, just require that they have them. And if that goes away, then they've got to have a backup ready to go in order to operate.
Does that seem reasonable? I mean,
Can I take it, could it be as simple as if attendance exceeds 40, provide adequate off-site parking or transportation?
I would prefer that there be some way that someone could actually kind of physically calculate, as opposed to just say, I feel like that was adequate or not.
Ah,
So how do you come up with a number
So,
of parking
I think,
spaces?
yeah, I mean, what I kind of tried to do with the other use permit was, okay, if it's 150 max, I mean, then you think that there are, I don't know, 1.5 people per car, and then just say, provide that many, whatever that calculation
yeah.
is.
But I mean, they can have some on-site
No,
parking,
yeah.
but not
I'm
much.
just trying to give a finite,
Right.
a
Yeah.
logical thought process of how you get to that number.
I mean, if you want to say, shall make provision for 0.67 vehicle or parking spaces per scheduled attendee at any event.
so they've got 100 that have 60-some,
Right.
that have to provide 60-some spaces.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Yeah,
picking a
but there
number.
is almost this idea that says, hey, if they're just having a Bible study with 15 people, they don't need to do this.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's adequate parking for that. So I think if it's more than a certain amount, then they need to provide 0.67 parking spaces.
But then you don't have
But
to.
then you don't really have to if everybody's coming with Uber.
No, but then you don't have to as well, because if they've already got 14 spaces and there's 14 people at a Bible study, they're already covered. They don't have to worry about setting up any arrangements with anywhere else, because they've got that as apparently, if that's a part of their lease where they're allowed 14 spaces, then that's already there. They don't have to make that business decision to do anything
Yeah.
else, because it's
But
already
it
there.
depends on how we write the condition.
But
Right,
then
if
they've
you
already
just
met
say
it.
they shall provide for X number of spaces, some of it can be on-site, some of it can be off-site. So they
14 of
can,
which can be on-site.
I kind of like the 0.67 or whatever it was per.
I picked that based on the 1.5 that was mentioned there. So that's just the one over the,
To practice our math. I mean, I would
Do my
prefer that
algebra.
it'd be commensurate with anything exceeding 40 attendees, then they would need to have it. I don't really want to, my opinion is not to have it in general.
Right.
That way there's a specific number, and maybe it's only 2 times out of 10 times that she's going to exceed 40 people. Because I think her business plan really isn't to do 150 all the time. Her business plan is to do smaller events, because that's kind of a niche that she's discovered. So
Maybe we can ask the
Yeah.
applicant if they have any sense, since they've been working this parking issue, of
yeah, you can come back up. That's fine.
how they might phrase this.
What was the question?
So we're trying to work with language that would capture this idea of what you've put in your letter that says, if we have over 40 guests, we'll have off-site parking. But put up some sort of formula that says, if we have more than X guests, whether you think that's 30 or 40, what a condition would be for how many spots you would make sure you had. is it? And so the suggestion has been 0.67 spots per attendee, if that works. So if you have 100, you can have 14, you have your, subtract your 40, so that's 60 times 0.67. That's how many you'd have to have. Or maybe the threshold's 30, because that's how many people could fit in the 14 spots you should kind of have around.
I mean, I think for most events, you're looking at typically two people come together, at least two, if not a little bit more. I think saying every 0.67 persons, you got to have a parking spot. That's a bit unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the other way around.
Hmm.
For every 1.5 people, you need to have a parking
Yeah, I
spot.
threw out the 1.5 because
And that's the flip of it, is just you'd have to have 0.67 parking spots per attendance.
I would suggest we just do 2. If we're going to do a number, anything over X, and we say you need 1 parking spot per 2 attendees, and then subtract the 14 spaces that they already get in their lease and so on. Robin, are there other businesses in Milton that are, where we run into this as being a problem, where if it's not defined?
I mean, I know the previous use permit that was approved last year, I think there was a lot of discussions about parking, and they were more limited as far as alternative parking. But as far as I know, there hasn't been any issues with that business providing parking, although I don't know what kind of events they've been having other than social events and Bible studies. They're not really concentrated on the wedding venue. So as far as I know, they haven't had any issues. I think if you look at, I think there were discussions before about Matilda's up at Birmingham Crossroads, because that's a music venue, and we were always trying to figure out, well, you know, how many parking spaces should be provided. And I think it's the same idea that you typically, to an event like that, you're going to have on average 2 people per car. And, you know,
Is it a source of frustration now?
I think they've worked it, that they're fine. They have enough.
After requesting 2 additions to their parking
Yeah,
requirements and
exactly.
permission. So they came in and said they need this much parking, then this much parking,
Yeah, then they
this much
expanded, yeah.
parking.
Yeah.
So I see the impetus to your questions
Yeah.
or your ideas.
So,
Yeah.
so maybe taking a crack at something, if the attendance is going to be more than 30 people, that they would provide adequate transportation or parking of 2 parking spot, or 1 parking spot for every 2 additional attendees.
And that can include our
14.
Uber options and
Right. It's by saying transportation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Not just parking spots, but transportation.
I'm pro-business, so it's hard to think about the hoops you have to jump through trying to run a business. Running a business is hard enough. I think practically, even if we were, I like the idea of the 2 per and figure out the threshold. My guess is there'd be no enforcement unless it became an issue. And if it became an issue, you'd be the first to know about it, most likely. But that would be the good fallback. And then what would be the recourse if that wasn't working for them? Could they file for a variance later?
Well, the recourse might have to be they can't have can't have 150 attendees,
But, okay,
Or yes, they could come back for a variance.
but they can come back for a variance.
okay.
Or it might be a.
Well, they don't
it
really
might
need
be
a variance. It would
condition
be a
mod-
zoning, it would
Yeah,
be a zoning
modification,
modification
yeah.
to the
Condition.
condition that you would be
Okay.
doing. So it's a type of variance, but it's called a zoning modification that goes to city council to modify that condition, whatever ends up happening. So.
something in the area of, say, if it's over 40, then whatever's over 40, we have to make sure that we either provide a option to get there or a parking space for every 2 people above 40. So if there's 80 people, then we've got to provide at least 20 parking spaces or be able to show that 20 vouchers were used to get people there. If someone were to complain, we could come in here and say, all right, we had 10 spaces and we had 10 people use vouchers. So we covered what was expected of us. So the problem wasn't really us.
Yeah, and I think the number would be 30, right? Because that
If you've got 14.
if you have 14 spaces, then technically 2 people per car would put you to 15 spaces, which I think is easy to round, right? So 30, and then anything over 30 would
Up to
need
120 more people are coming, we would have to be able to provide 60,
60 spaces.
either spaces or a combination of spaces and vouchers that we can prove.
Does that sound
That seem
reasonable?
fair?
I think we can.
Paul, can you write that?
Can I write that?
I wasn't sure about the
I can
voucher
try.
portion of it, but
So it makes sense that you'd have a way to prove that you had accommodated parking,
That's one of the
whether
things
it's a
that-
voucher or
Yeah.
here's how we accommodated it, because it's going to
We'll be
be,
able to prove how many vouchers were used
Yes.
after each event.
is a voucher a standard method that you're using today? Or is that just kind of top of mind idea?
That's something my wife found.
Yes, that's one of the, that's what we're going to be using when we open.
Okay.
But I've seen it used, and I had been talking with other vendors and wedding venues, and parking is a common issue for my type of business. And so I've been talking to them about their solutions, and one of them came up with, they shuttle, they use schools and churches and other businesses, grocery store parking lots, things like that, to shuttle guests in, and it works well for them. So that's one of our options that we will employ. The Uber voucher, Uber and Lyft, a lot of the big conferences and conventions that you see around Atlanta, that's how they get their attendees to
Sure.
the event. And they have a specific department just for weddings. So we're going to be Uber and Lyft.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's called Uber Events. So we'll be utilizing those. And like I said, it's already included in our base package to offer 25 of those vouchers.
So the real question is how many people are going to be comfortable using Uber versus wanting to park their own vehicle?
You know what? We're just going to gauge it on a case-by-case basis.
Yep.
I know that the younger people will love it. Like I said, the more seasoned people my age, are more comfortable driving themselves and will be more attracted to valet or self-parking.
Cool.
I do intend to, like, for anyone who has special needs or any type of disability, they will get first come, first serve on our parking over in the complex.
Smart.
And we have 4 reserved parking spots, one for the couple that is getting married, and then one for our security officer, our off-duty police officer, and then 2 for the families. Those are specifically for our use.
That's great. Good
But
idea,
that's
Judy.
included in the 14 that we'll get. So
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
is that it? Thank you.
ready to hear what I've magically come up with?
Yes.
We'll shoot this out there and see what he thinks. Applicant shall provide either off-site parking or a transportation option to facilitate rides such that the number of additional parking spaces and transportation options actually utilized shall be at least 0.5 per attendee over 30.
Sounds good.
Over 30 attendees.
Per attendee over, the older people, the older people.
You keep coming back to age.
I know, hey, I'm one of them. And I'm definitely one of the late adopters on the new process. Per attend number.
I have another question, Paul, once you finish.
Total. I don't know how to say it other than that, but
Well done, Paul, by the way.
I think we'll just add attendees at the end of it. That's it.
You good?
Yeah.
Paul,
Yeah.
another question on page 15 of 16. if we were to strike provision D, if we were to strike provision D, does that then just revert to the days and hours in the use permit, which are on page 8?
If we start, I mean, I'm not looking at the hours in the use permit, but if we strike that, then it will revert to whatever the code says, yes.
Yeah, which gives them the flexibility if in the future they choose for 7, and it makes it cleaner.
I like it.
So I'm ready to propose, unless somebody has further discussion.
I was just wondering about the time frame for the use permit. I understand we can.
It never expires.
But we can add we could add that as a condition, from what I understand from past discussions.
Oh, yeah, it stays with the property or, yeah. So Suite 301 will have a use permit for this use, whether they continue to lease it or not.
Right, unless can we add a condition
And we
of
don't
time?
have
I thought we
sunsets.
talked about that in the past, we could.
Like,
My preference is that where we have a zoning action that to get rid of something should require another zoning action to get rid of it. Which I prefer that we don't complicate it by putting that in there. If we had to, my preference is that language says, if at some point in time X happens, then the city may institute an action to revoke the use permit through the same process that they've gone through to.
Sounds kind of messy.
Mhm.
But the other side of it is, the concern that I know I personally have of signing up for in perpetuity, that our grandchildren are going to be living with this event facility there.
Yeah.
And, again, you've done a wonderful job putting the packet together, but should you sell to somebody who's not as conscientious, that's just a real condition or concern I have.
What I will tell you is we're supposed to be addressing the use, not the person. So if the use is appropriate, then, and if you want to, if you can condition it with the way they operate, then go for it and put all those conditions on there. But it's not really supposed to be, the considerations are planning considerations, which don't really factor into the person that's applying.
All right.
I'm ready to second Judy.
Okay. Propose we recommend approval of U 22-04 use permit with the recommended conditions listed on page 15 of 16 of the packet, striking condition 1D and adding condition 2B, Paul's language regarding parking, which Paul, if you could maybe read for the record.
Applicant shall provide either off-site parking or a transportation option to facilitate rides such that the total number of additional parking spaces and transportation options actually utilized shall be at least 0.5 per attendee over 30 attendees.
All right.
No, and one more thing, another friendly amendment to that, that we restrict the maximum number of attendees of the assembly hall stroke indoor auditorium to 40 during school hours.
Do we need that given
That's
they're putting the
that's-
parking someplace else?
That's one of the commitments that they've made.
It was when they were using Fulton County Schools for parking.
Well, they're now using whatever for parking, right? I don't think parking's an issue here. It's a question of number of heads there, and they're committed to give the parking as required.
And the 40 is what they've asked for?
So 40 is what they've asked for.
But I thought that was because of the condition on the parking, that they were going to be
They would
using
not
Fulton
have, they would
County.
not have access to Fulton County. I think that was the reason.
But
Okay.
they would have to figure out other parking. if
Right.
They went,
They figured out other parking, in fact.
which is 2B.
Right.
True, that's
Right.
true.
So
Okay.
I thought that was
mind, you're
one of
right.
those because they were going to use their parking. So I prefer not to incorporate that.
I would second them. Is it time to second?
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on it? I think we've discussed it enough. Okay, all in
Do we need
favor?
one more, I mean,
Okay.
point, just, do we need to add, or do we need to contemplate anything with delivery and all of that? Let it be, because there's no specific area, I guess, in the building.
Yeah, I don't think we can, I'm comfortable with it.
The other tenants have the same challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's going to be,
they can get delivery now as early as 7 if they want to, because we took that 9 o'clock condition off of them.
Yeah, 10 a.m., right?
Less is more.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Commissioner Birds. We've got a second by Commissioner James. All in favor of recommending approval of the use case with the conditions outlined by Judy and Paul's addition? Say aye. All in favor?
aye.
All opposed? 6 to 0.
yeah.
Yep, unanimous.
Great, awesome. Thank you.
Congrats, guys.
And thank you to the applicant. I
Thank
think you did
you.
a very good job.
Yeah,
We're
very
excited-
good.
We're excited
Very
about
thorough.
having you.
Robin, during the course of the discussion, the last discussion, you were in dialogue, I think, with Trey with regard to compliance and compliance with code. And what you'd do, you wouldn't be there. If there was a complaint, you'd have to talk with them. You went through that monologue about what you'd be doing. Question. Last week, I was reading the Herald, and there was an article in there about some guys with golf carts down here,
Right.
which was a subject of discussion that we had, I believe, at the last meeting that we had with regard to their being in violation of code. And now they're in the Milton Herald being touted as a paragon of virtue here in Milton. And I wonder where we stand on our code enforcement.
So originally they were parking on the grass and around, whether it's on Mayfield or on Heritage. And so they took them off and then put them on the parking area. So Bob and I are going to be discussing that about what to do next to determine whether they're in violation or not.
Because having them in the parking area, that's not something that's intended by the code, is it?
That's what we'll be looking at. So,
Okay. Well, we'll talk to you about it next
Yeah.
time, I guess.
yeah, we can get back to you about
Beat
that.
goes
But yes, originally they were, all over the place. And then they started parking there. So we'll deal with it.
Okay, great, thanks.
Great. All right.
Use permits are always so much fun.
Wait till next month.
It's gonna be gone next month. All right, now on to new business, the update on the comprehensive plan. Welcome back.
Hi, thank you. And good evening, planning commissioners.
Good evening.
All right, just a quick recap of our short-term work program projects. On the left side, I showed some numbers of how many projects by category. So as you know, we have a lot of land use projects, transportation, sustainability, economic development, placemaking, and branding. And to date, the number of completed projects remains the same, but we have 40 active projects on the list for executed projects and 49 unexecuted projects. So my goal in the coming months is to review our list of unexecuted projects and do like a cross-reference with strategic plan and work with other departments to identify which of these projects are indeed consider, active in progress. So next month, I'll be able to provide you an updated unexecuted list. So next is update on the following projects. Our second urban growth boundary stakeholder committee meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, January 31st. That's next week. The goal for the upcoming meeting is to develop a draft map of Milton's urban growth boundary and then address the questions that the committee had during the first stakeholder meeting. And I believe that's back in late November. Second, Unified Development Code. Planning Commission's review of the UDC continues. And tonight, we will review Articles 4 and 5, that's residential and business districts respectively. If we complete the review for these two articles, then maybe next month, we will review Article 6, and that's special purpose districts. For flag lots, staff performed due diligence on flag lots in adjacent counties, specifically Cherokee County and Forsyth County. If you recall, we initially presented this project to council. Our staff shared information on flag lots in Milton, including neighboring cities like Alpharetta, Sandy Springs, and Roswell. During the meeting, the council directed staff to further do research on Cherokee and Forsyth counties and begin with public interfacing. So that said, our first public meeting is already scheduled and will take place on February 28th. Legal ads will go out next month to inform the public of this meeting. For branding study, the project management team met with a consultant to discuss preliminary plans for branding study. The city has engaged Arnott Muldrow firm to assist us in conducting a branding study to include character area specific recommendations. So we've already started our data gathering phase. Staff has been sending information to consultants. This includes all of our existing plans from comp plans, strat plans, also includes trails. We've also provided them our logos, our typeface, fonts, and things like that. So our next steps is to finalize the project timeline, form a stakeholder committee, and then project introduction to the council. Then after that, we'll do our first public kickoff meeting. Last but not least is a non-comp plan project district at Mayfield. Several property owners and adjacent property owners of the subject parcels attended the public workshop conducted by TSW, a consulting firm that will assist us in developing a plan appropriate for the district at Mayfield. The purpose of the first workshop is to gather general feedback for the area identified as district at Mayfield. During the workshop, TSW utilized Mentimeter, an interactive presentation tool that let everyone vote, ask questions, and interact throughout the workshop. So what's next is that TSW will compile all the feedbacks and comments and then come back to our next public workshop, which is already scheduled on Thursday, February 9th. So the goal for that second public workshop is to present the preliminary concept plans. And then there's also an activity where people can do some designing with TSW.
And by the way, that was a very cool interactive tool that they
It
used for
is,
that.
yeah. It was
cool.
very engaging. So I think it was a very successful workshop. So that's all I have for tonight. And I know there's still a lot of work to do. There's still a lot of projects that we're going to execute in the next 4 years. Thankfully, we're done with the first year, so 4 more years to go. And of course, on behalf of the team, project team and staff, we will try to continue to work hard and continue to get to the finish line, finish what we've started. And of course, this year, I'm expecting more projects to come.
Yep.
Are there any questions for me?
Yeah, Jackie, on the first page, and you're probably aware of this, but the Atlanta Regional Commission has put a call for applications for LCI funding out either yesterday or the day before for 2023. So if you want to get a project
Take a look at
considered
it.
for LCI, they just announced that they're accepting applications. And I realize this is kind of the chicken and the egg of you kind of want to wait on the UGB, but you don't want to miss the
Opportunity
window
the-
for the LCI funding, might involve getting,
Well, we can look at the requirements for this LCI, because I think last year, if I remember correctly, they are funding projects related more to transportation, smart cities and things like that. Not so much of the small area plan, but maybe this year it's different. I can take a look at.
Yeah, it was, it just came across my feed and I noted it that it was a call for LCI funding and then saw this and said, don't miss the window.
Okay, I'll check.
And maybe like you said, it's.
Yeah, that would
but
help. Yeah.
If you want to sit in traffic on I-40 and, or 140, I believe transportation is a factor. on
yeah.
Round Mill.
Any more questions for me?
Very good.
First of all, oh, go ahead.
Thank you, and
Yeah,
see
thank you.
you.
I noticed lots of green. That's a very good thing. I almost noticed 3 or 4 of the yellows. How can we help on that? How can the planning commission aid any of those that are at risk?
Let me check.
Something we can be doing? I mean, some of them,
So each of this project is really different. Like some of the yellows, we kind of put that on hold because we're waiting for another project to be completed. And I think a lot of the projects that are waiting for the branding study. So I know in this list, we have the marketing study, we have, designing the roundabouts. We also have park signs and things like that. So if we complete the branding study, then we can go ahead, push for these other projects.
well, think of ways that we could be of assistance on any of these. We're happy to help.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
All right,
We can
great.
always come up with new projects for you all to
For
do.
you, yeah.
I don't know, I think you guys are pretty busy already with
Oh,
all the
yes.
different committees. but
Wait, is this on?
yeah.
Before I end, we are also looking for new stakeholders for the branding study. So I know some of you, if you're not yet a member of any committees, you're welcome to join. Just let us know.
Yeah.
Now is your chance.
Oh, Ron's.
Are you?
Put my name down.
Okay, thank you. Nice. All right, thank you.
Right. Now the fun part.
I'm gonna stand up here. Okay, so I believe, Jackie put on your dais, all the, you had, requested definitions, so thank you, Commissioner Burrs, for reminding me, for reference.
And this is, we're not reviewing that tonight. It's just if we want to look something up.
Right, but also I think it's helpful if we have a question like we did the last time, so.
Super helpful.
Okay. So, I think we're on residential districts. Start from page 4.4 unless you have any issues with the table of contents.
I have an issue with it. All the numbers or page numbers are incorrect. They're all off by 1. So if you
Okay.
can add 1 to each of those numbers,
Okay,
it'll be accurate.
pagination, okay. So we're on R1, single family dwelling.
Just a broad comment here with regard to, because we'll be going through a number of sections here. It would be helpful, I think, to the reader if there was a map included that showed where these are located.
That's not, I mean, we typically wouldn't, I mean, we do have a zoning map that's part of,
Or if we could, we've talked about this once before. I think we could do a link to the zoning map.
right, we can do that, a link,
Let's
yeah.
do a link to the
Yeah.
zoning map. So
Yeah.
that people, when we're talking about R1, they can zip to that and find the R1s. Excuse me.
Yeah, I just wouldn't want to put, would be hard to read, but yeah.
And the, also in the very first picture we had here, I really was trying to figure out what that was. Do we have a better picture that we could use?
I've seen the same thing. I'm like, uh-huh.
Not to nitpick, but golly.
Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah, and
It's
it
not
may
good.
be the way that the copying did versus the actual file, but we can work on that.
Okay. And question, do we have any R1?
Very little. I can't think of it right off of the top of my head, but I wouldn't want to say there are none, but
Okay.
it doesn't, I know there's more R2 than there is R1,
Yeah, because
but
I was on the map, I couldn't find any.
yeah, it could, I can check our GIS just to make sure my eyes and your eyes aren't mistaking things,
Yeah,
but.
well, mine are getting old. That was pointed out in the last
No, I know.
presentation.
Well, I
too.
mean, whether we have it or not, if somebody wanted to, for whatever reason, rezone AG1 to R1 or whatever, then they would have that ability to do that, so.
It's a 2-acre minimum. I wish we had more of our one than that.
That's right.
Yeah, that's true, 2-acre.
Can we just make sure we have a link for these C articles? I know we talked about that last time.
Yeah, the
Just-
link for
just
the
Link them.
Article 8, yeah, the
Yeah.
hyperlink.
Yeah, hyperlink. Thank you.
Yeah.
Great.
So I just have a general question because we have, similar formats as we move forward. So what was the process in determining that R1 was with the 200 feet, frontage 35, area 2 acre? What, just so I'm
That came
understand.
from Fulton County. We've never changed any of
Okay,
those
so it was-
development standards. Everything that's here is with the zoning districts come right out of the zoning ordinance, so nothing has changed.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify.
Okay, so that's 4.1.4, bulk and mass.
With regard to building placement, in that column, there's accessory structure setbacks, and I'm having difficulty understanding this. Accessory structures may be located in rear or side yards, but may not be located within a minimum yard. What is a minimum yard?
So the minimum yard is the,
Same question too.
it's the light blue. So the distance, the 60-foot front is, or I believe it's 60 foot, the 25, and the
So-
50 rear.
So it couldn't be in any of the
Setback.
setback areas?
Yeah, setback.
Okay.
Okay,
Right.
but it
So
could
it
be
can't
within
be in the
gray
blue
area.
area.
Yeah, okay.
So is another way to say it within a minimum setback? It can't be in the setback.
Yeah.
Because I was the same way. It's like, what's the minimum yard?
Maybe you.
Well, it's defined if we look at the definition of yard. So I think I don't really want to mess with it because it's all kind of, I understand the terminology, but I think it's all set
says
up in the
yard minimum,
system.
Yard minimum.
Says yard, comma, minimum.
I looked for it under the M's. It wasn't there. Let's
Yeah.
see. Yard.
Yard minimum.
See minimum. I see yard, side, rear, oh, there it is. Minimum.
Open space on the same lot with a structure that extends between the structure and the lot
Yeah,
line.
that makes sense.
That's the yard.
So accessory structure within a minimum yard, and then minimum yard means the minimum distance between a building or specified structure and a lot line as specified in the district regulations. So it specifies it in A, B, C, and D. So,
Yeah, I think part of the challenge is to us, that's a setback.
I know, we're used to saying setback
Mhm.
instead of yard, but
Mhm.
everything in the ordinance is based on yard, so,
It's-
yeah. I know, it's,
So does yard need to be capitalized? The Y,
sorry?
does the Y need to be capitalized?
Yeah, if it's a reference,
why?
The,
they're
the Y
defined
in the
terms.
word yard.
because it's a term.
Side yard, rear yard.
I mean, it is, if we go with our definition, it's defined and, yeah.
But I'm saying then that would alert anybody to know that it's a defined term. Otherwise. I
But it
wouldn't.
is, isn't it? It looks like it's capitalized.
Mm-mm.
Not in the accessory structure setback.
Oh, yeah,
No,
I'm
it's
sorry, I'm
not.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree.
Yep.
Side yard, yeah.
No, minimum yard, right?
Both
Minimum.
rear
minimum
and
yard.
side yards are also defined.
Yeah, all of them are.
Okay.
So both yards
All
need
of
to be
them are.
capitalized.
Got it, yeah.
Actually, I think you want the term side and minimum. That's a defined term. Yard has its own definition. Minimum yard has a separate definition. So if you're good, if you're.
Oh,
going
I
on
see. So
convention,
after minimum, the yard
Yeah.
shouldn't be,
M and Y.
both of them. Okay,
R and
that's what I
S.
have.
Mhm.
So that would apply to all of the different zoning
All
districts.
of the different zoning,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and Robin, just for my clarification again, on heated floor area, those are also Fulton County?
I'm sorry, what did you
The
say?
heated floor area, those are derived from Fulton County?
Yes, well, no, I mean, yes, that was all. We've never touched it. That just came directly from the original zoning ordinance. So,
Okay,
yeah.
got it.
Yep. Okay, for 4.1.6, the next page, entrances.
Robin, this section and others here deal with subdivisions that have more than 3 lots. Where do we find within the code the regulations or the ordinances that deal with 3 lots or less?
As far as
Like
entrance?
entrances or rural view shed? Because they should be subject to the same sort of.
Okay, so, I'm not sure if this precludes about entrances. It doesn't say it has to be
No,
a subdivision.
well, it says here, entrances off a public right-of-way for subdivisions with more
Oh,
than
with
3
more than
lots.
3 lots,
And
okay.
so it's more than 3 lots. What do we do for subdivisions that are 3 or less? I mean, where do we find, is that another section where we'd find the things that would govern entrances?
So if you had a
and rural
shared
view shed?
driveway, the entrance to a minor plat with 3 lots, you want to know what is required.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Right. So I think that is in other sections where we talk about, I think there was a text amendment like less than a year ago about where a gate should be as
Yeah, I
far as
remember
it has
that.
to be 20 feet and then the keypad 15 feet if there is one. Signage, that's dealt with if individually for AG1 or whatever zoning is under this sign ordinance. And then walls are also included, I believe, in the rural Milton overlay.
Mhm.
Um,
And rural view shed standards?
So minor plats do not have a rural view shed standard.
Why not?
That's how the council decided to do it. That was, so any minor plats or individual lots that are along Freemanville or whatever, the only thing that they're required to do is to meet architectural standards, but they are not required to conform to the rural view shed. So individual lots and minor plats do not have to do a rural view shed.
So we could have, a series of these things next to each other, and there goes our rural view shed. If it's a onesie, okay, you're past it before you know it. It's just,
I agree.
this is
I know.
inconsistent.
That makes no sense.
It makes zero
Yeah.
sense, yeah.
No.
Can we suggest that we can?
Make that a
yeah,
policy
let's-
possibility.
Let's put in a section that deals with three or fewer lots.
Well, that'd be a policy change, but I can put that on the list.
Put it on the
Yeah,
list.
yeah. No, I know. I think that discussion at the time, years ago, when we created the rural view shed, staff was proponents of having all lots.
Yeah.
And at the time, that particular council, what was made of, they said no. They did not agree with staff's recommendation, so. So it may be something that was 7, 8 years ago. Maybe there's a different opinions, so we can put that down. as
Yeah,
a-
please add it to the list. 'Cause I think it's
I
time to
think there are
revisit that.
different opinions, but.
No, I agree, because my point was the same. There's lots of individual lots, but if you put a bunch of them together, they have the same impact as subdivision. So-
Exactly, yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
So section
What-
4.1.6, I just wanted to confirm, is that the gate, the 60 feet in section C, 4.1.6C? Is that right?
60 feet, that's for a subdivision, yeah.
That's for a subdivision?
Yeah.
Three or more lots.
Okay. And then the next thing about water features, like, is there any sort of definition or what's considered a water feature? Just to kind of clarify what
I
that
don't
would
think
be.
that there's a definition for that. I think it was just, fountain, you know it when you see it kind of thing.
I would,
Skating waterfalls.
Fountains,
What does that, you know,
waterfalls.
It's broad. It's so broad.
yeah.
Yeah, I get that, yeah.
And rural, simple and rustic.
Right.
that
I was
is-
like,
What's that?
okay. You know what might be helpful? Because for some of these areas like signage, walls, maybe pictures. Because we were kind of doing that for Mayfield, like, hey, we want this look. Looks like that. I mean, I think the pictures help people understand, oh, okay, I get what they say now. All right, I got it. Just a thought.
So at this point, could we go in and create a definition for what, like water features or something like that? Examples or anything like that? Or put in
I
examples?
think that's fine, yeah. It's just trying to back up what's already existing as far as giving more detail. So we can try to take a stab at a definition for water features.
Because I know that's the same thing that's in all of these for today.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just, I don't know, it sometimes helps if you're referring to things, just to have a visual of what you're trying to accomplish.
I think too, like if you're down in Florida, these subdivisions do have fountains at the entrance or a rock wall or a marble wall with water
Cascading.
flowing over.
Well,
it in
there's
the
some
entrance and
here
all
in
that.
North Fulton. There's a fair amount of them. So
Yes.
it doesn't even have to go to Florida, but yeah.
Yeah, so, but in this case, they're not allowed, so.
So do everybody agree for us to come up
Work on a
with
definition,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that'd be good.
Okay. So this goes, the next section speaks to what I just said. This subsection may only applies to subdivision with more than 3 lots, blah, blah, except for section 4.1.7B4, which is the architectural standards. They do not apply to a single lot of record or to subdivisions with 3 or fewer lots. Yeah, so that's.
So 4.1.7B1A, just capitalize the D in design committee, since design is a defined term.
The design committee, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And in that same section, it speaks of the design review process. What is that process? Is it also, can someone who's trying to build something find that design review process somewhere?
So, I think it's in the,
Or add a link to it.
A link would be good.
so there's a definition for the design committee, but the design review process would be exactly what it says when we look at, usually it's at the preliminary, well, a little bit at the preliminary plat, but more at the land disturbance permit. We look at the view shed, and like Tracy and me and the arborist and Bob will look at it to make sure that would be compliant with, it's fairly subjective. I mean, we kind of have to look at each property on its own because they're all kind of treated a little bit differently. But that is the design review process. Once we look at the applicant's plans and we look at it as a group and then give advice to the applicant to make changes.
So there isn't like you couldn't go to your procedure manual and pull out the pages that describe the design.
I mean, that's a good point. We make an SOP out of that. So,
I mean, other than explaining to the applicant that you don't want, the idea of a rural view shed is to be an organic design. You know, in the 90s, every subdivision had, you know, a shade tree every 30 feet on center, you know. So to get away from that very structured, formal entrance, it's more organic, mounding, massing of plants. That's the approach or the explanation that we give to you.
Okay.
To explain that.
I was trying to put myself, when I read this, I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of an applicant and say, okay, well, what does that process look like? Is there a process map for it? What am I getting myself into here? How should I prepare? That was my question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me from what I've heard, it's a fluid process that isn't really written down anywhere.
I mean, other than what the definition and what, I think there's more, like the next page talks about the intent of the rural view shed is to preserve blah, 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 do this, do that. So there are some general parameters in the ordinance, but yes, it's nothing that is written down exactly how to do it. Yeah.
Step one in the design process is to review this.
Okay.
It's to simply explain the rural view shed and then emphasize the intent.
Okay, thank you.
So on A, isn't sometimes the arborist involved?
Yes, so we always have the arborist
Okay.
and Tracy's a landscape architect, so we all kind of work together.
So on C, on septic systems, I know I've seen a couple of those. I mean, aren't you still trying to do some view shed around those? Particularly, I mean, I know we kind of went to starting to, for communities to have, not necessarily septic, but their drain area to have some view shed so that they look more park-like, I guess.
So you're
Right,
referring to stormwater, like detention ponds?
Stormwater detention, yeah.
I mean, we try to keep the detention areas outside of the front if possible, but obviously sometimes topography dictates where it goes. But trying to think if we
had in
Yes.
that one
the
we
creek,
heard,
which one? The one on
So Linden Creek.
Linden
on
Creek.
Auburn, that detention pond is
Mm-hmm.
development that hasn't started yet next to the fire station on Thompson.
Right.
The detention facility. In those instances, we work with each applicant to make sure, yes, it's vegetated, it looks organic,
Mm-hmm.
sort of like it was just.
Like
that's
fake.
That's where the most spot is always at, you know. so,
Right.
Screen it to some.
but I know a year ago, the one we heard there at Providence and Birmingham Highway, we had them shift the detention pond to make sure it was outside the rural view shed.
Oh, Providence and,
Yeah.
at the roundabout.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know like in our subdivision, the detention pond is along Birmingham Highway, but you wouldn't know it. It
Right,
just looks like a bunch of pine trees.
right. Yeah.
Right?
So, and also, I mean, in A, would we also capitalize rural view shed as well, since it's defined?
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that that particular issue is going to be replete throughout.
No,
the
it's
document.
in all of these sections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't we note that like we did the links
Yeah.
and things like that, photographs, we'll note throughout the document. that
Mhm.
it's being
Yeah,
broadcast.
those need to be updated, yeah. And then for C, is there any portion of Milton that's outside of Fulton County?
No,
No, everything's in Fulton County?
yep,
Oh, okay.
yep. So like with primary variance, we would capitalize, that's defined. So we'll just go through and
Yeah.
that's defined, capitalized. Okay, the next page, just more, detail on the rural view shed, and then the intent.
On 5, on the next page, you're on 4.7, right?
Yeah.
Okay. On 5 on 4.7, I think the way it's written, we have an introductory clause, and then we go on to the developer must install, and the way it's written, the developer is the subject of the sentence. However, if you go back to that adverbial clause at the beginning, after issuing the necessary permits, the developer doesn't do that. So may I suggest that we rewrite it to say after the city issues the necessary permits?
Then, kind of following up on Ron's point before, that next clause says, but before the required pre-construction meeting, but again, I don't know if that's some specific step in a process.
It is.
And so is that
We
somehow?
have to have a pre-construction meeting with the developer before they can start doing any work on the property, so.
So is that one meeting?
It is one meeting.
So is it,
So once plans have been approved, but before the permit is issued,
For them to proceed.
so then does that need to be some sort of defined term? I mean, that says, hey, that, yeah, we're, pre-construction meeting is whatever, the meeting with development department, design committee, whoever it might be
Right.
with. But it needs to be defined then if it is only one specific meeting.
I mean, we can do that.
Okay.
And then on 3, it talks about equestrian-related structures and uses. Do we have examples of what those are, or a reference to them? That might be helpful. So I don't know what those are. Um, Yeah, let's see. Yeah, we can try to come up with a definition for that situation. Yeah, that'd be helpful.
And was the idea to only be equestrian related or agricultural related?
I think it's agricultural in general, because I think if somebody, let's say if they wanted to grow pumpkins or grow corn and they went all along the frontage of the road, we're not gonna say, oh, no, you can't do that. So I think it's not just equestrian, but it is, agricultural, because I know we don't have a lot of that, but there is a fair amount of parcels that they raise hay, they grow grass or whatever you do to create hay, so they could have it all the way up to, the frontage.
Yeah, and some have sheep and cattle.
Right, yeah,
and
yeah.
That's,
So I think it's really more general, not just equestrian, but agricultural, so. Yeah, we'll do a definition. Capitalize for that.
Okay.
And then primary, rural viewshed, and secondary, all that. So we'll go through. Okay, anything else on that page or questions?
I'm good.
Okay.
So on 4.8, number 7,
Okay,
so, the way this reads, it's basically, it seems like it's saying that, I don't, is there the intention, or has there been in the past where like a UDC is actually like recorded in the property records?
right. So that's the requirement at the time of the execution of this affidavit, the property with, so it's basically stating that they understand what is the restrictions on the development and disturbance of the rural view shed. And then it needs to be recorded. I mean, it's kind of hard for us to know whether if there's a transfer of property, whether they actually do it. But if it's recorded and they do a title search, then.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So the only way, I do real estate
Yeah.
transactions and closings, so I review title all the time. So the only way that I would know if there is some sort of a UDC that would be applicable to this property would be for that document or whatever to be actually recorded in the chain of title. Otherwise, how would I know that there needs to be this affidavit unless it's somehow stated in a UDC that's recorded and I'm checking that title to make sure that, hey, this requirement needs to be done so that the chain of title has it.
So isn't it that's what it's saying up in the first part of 7? It's saying that must ensure that there is recorded in the chain of title stating the following. So
Right.
you're asking us, how do we know whether it happened?
No, I'm asking, so before transfer of any legal interest in this R1 property is subject to a rule, every legal beneficial owner must, of that parcel, must ensure that there's recorded in the chain of title. But how would the attorney doing the closing know that this property is a part of a rural view shed or anything without there being some document in the property records recorded that would say, hey, this parcel is a part of this UDC, a part of this is, needs to meet this compliance requirement of the rural view shed. Nobody would ever know that unless it's in the chain of title.
It's a chicken and egg problem.
If I'm sitting
Which
there
comes
today
first?
and I sell my property, how do I know I'm obligated to do this?
Well, wouldn't it go out from the title cert or title or? wouldn't-
Title's not going to check the
Mm-mm.
ordinance.
The recording.
So it would be on plat.
Yeah, but-
But that doesn't matter if you've got 3 lots or less that you don't identify that on or a single lot.
But it wouldn't apply to that. But I guess, so you're saying a title search doesn't look for the recordings?
No, it would look for, that's what I'm saying. They would be looking for recordings, but if this or a UDC or something doesn't reference, it's not recorded in the public records, we wouldn't know that.
I know, but I guess I'm confused.
This is
'cause
saying
it's-
that you've got to make sure that before a transfer happens, this affidavit or whatever is recorded or a part of the chain of title. But we wouldn't, it's not in, where is it going to be in the chain of title? It's never been in the chain of title, so we would never know.
Here's the deal. I own today property I've owned for 30 years before this was a requirement.
Right,
I'm obligated to do this
right.
before I sell anything. But I don't have to get any permission anywhere else to sell my property to another homeowner. How do I know that I have to do this before I can sell the property?
Okay.
But yeah, it would have to, something referencing this would have to be in the chain of title.
And there's just no way that,
Okay,
How could
we
you get
all
something in?
put this together originally.
No,
so I
you can
guess-
record something. They could record, I mean, I don't know if the intention of this whole thing was somehow to have a UDC recorded in the Fulton County property records. And somehow it's referencing all the
So
different.
let's say if a developer creates a subdivision and lots, 28 through 32 are in the rural view shed.
It works going forward.
Yeah, going-
It works going
Right, going
forward
forward.
Okay.
because we can require it go on a
Backwards.
plat or the deed that the developer who's subdividing is going to do.
Right.
The trick is for someone who owns a home now, I hear that's where the issue is going to come up.
It's not there now. And yeah, if this is going to be a requirement that's going to be in there going forward, then it'll potentially be in the chain of title wherever, however it's referenced, and hopefully it's really clearly referenced somehow that this affidavit has got to be there, based on that reference in the chain of title from a plat or whatever that's going to get recorded going forward.
We
But
may
yeah,
have to talk about that because I don't know how we can get something that's going to be cross-referenced to every individual on the deed records.
Yeah.
I don't think it will be. So it's almost like it's got to be something going forward, and I don't know how we can pick up ones that have existed. How do we get the first one into the chain of title? I hear what you're saying, that how do you get that first one into the chain of title to make someone aware that they have to do? I mean, we can do it, but I don't know how anyone's on notice that they're obligated to do that. I mean, it's a requirement, but as a practical matter, how is, I see.
and this has been there, like this has always been a requirement.
Since we
rural-
adopted the rural view shed. Now, it doesn't include minor plats or individual lots. It's a subdivision of more than 3 lots that would have any lots adjoining a public road.
So just so I'm understanding that, in my little subdivision, there's 2 lots that are along the rural view shed in a subdivision, but our subdivision was platted in 2005.
Right, so it doesn't apply to you. I mean, I
So it
don't
doesn't
believe it.
apply to those 2 because they weren't platted with a
Yeah.
rural view shed.
Right.
But there may have been, since the rural view shed has been put into place, but nobody would know searching title that this is a requirement because there's nothing put on the public record about it. I mean, unless that's been a part of the process with plats and requirements on how when the plat is done, that, hey, this needs to be noted on there so that it's put out there on a
Right, so
notice.
if it's put on the plat and
Or,
then
I don't
when
know.
the developer sells the lots, then they can also.
But I don't know if that's a requirement so far for the plats.
I don't think we've been doing that, so.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the easiest way to notify people that, now, obviously, I don't know how many people actually look at their plats when they buy a piece of property, so even putting it on the plat, unless there's some way.
Well, they go
Right,
sell
I
it.
mean, I agree with the practical matter. Who
Attorneys
looks at their
do.
plats? I might, Samit might. This whole board might. Okay, that's 8 of the 60,000 people.
Yeah. So maybe we can talk about this offline and then come back with a.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out how, what we can tie to, and it's tied going forward, and if that accomplishes what we need to or want to accomplish. And
So I guess, do you all agree? I think the original intent at the time of adoption was that it's already actually, the rural view shed is on the plat. It shows it, right? The 40-foot and the 20-foot. But I think the intent of the planning commissioners who were around at the time of this adoption, they wanted to make sure that each individual lot owner knew that, whether they ever saw the plat or not, they knew that there was a commitment or a requirement that, swimming pools and jungle gyms and everything can't be in that 60-foot, which technically it's a front setback, so you shouldn't have a swimming pool there and you shouldn't have a jungle gym there, but there could maybe do other things that it's just another belt and suspenders or they couldn't go and do landscaping that was totally contrary to what a rural view shed
Is it
landscaping would
just
be.
to help me out, and is the rural shed only apply after the adoption of these? So like do you put a rural view shed on an existing single family home
that was in existence in a subdivision prior to the adoption? No.
Right.
Kinda
Okay,
like
so
what
it may not
Judy
be a
was-
problem because if the rural review shed doesn't apply to those properties that we're thinking about, then we're not really, it only says before a property is transferred that is subject to a rural view shed, they have to do these things. So if the rural view shed came into effect
Right.
when the notice was or could have been put on the plat or something.
And we do put it, we put
Then-
the
then
rural
it's-
view shed on the plat.
Yeah,
But
then-
we're
then
not
this-
necessarily doing, I don't know if people are doing the affidavits. I'm sure they're
But I'm
not.
saying this becomes less of an issue because that there is a notice to them. If, I mean, I don't know
No,
what
I
happens,
agree.
but
That's
if-
the way it was the intent. We're not going back in time and making Judy's subdivision or White Column subdivision go and do a rural view shed. It's for any platted subdivisions at the
Okay.
time of adoption and forward.
Well, we'll figure out what the practicalities of it in order
Okay.
to make sure it's written such that we can do what we want.
Okay.
All right?
Keep you employed.
So anything else on 4-8?
We do like the violation penalty. They're barred from developing that for
So
3 years.
the only thing with that violation penalty I was gonna ask is, when's the calculation for the 3 years? Because that's gonna be a point of a contention for somebody. So you've got to add something else in there that the 3 years clock would start at, blah, 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 whatever time that is.
Date of disturbance, date of disturbance.
Yeah, however it's recorded in in a record to show, okay, this is the date of the citation, this is the date of the whatever.
I would
Then
say it
your
would
clock
be at the
starts.
time of the violation, or, maybe they could restore it back to what was be appropriate, just like any kind of violation. I don't know. Maybe it was meant, prior to the approval, so they don't even know what they're supposed to do. I mean, I would imagine it would be at the time that they disturbed it, before approvals of the land disturbance permit.
As long as that date is somehow, there's a reference to, or somehow somebody could go back to that record to show, okay, the date of disturbance
Right.
was this date. And so that's why the city has instituted the 3-year time period from this date. Then, you've got that record to show that. Otherwise, somebody could.
So like, to say something like, for being developed for 3 years from the time of disturbance, or?
Well, you can choose the date of disturbance, you can
citation.
choose the date the violation is notice of violation or.
Right, I mean, quite honestly, someone can disturb it, but it's
We may not know.
known.
You don't know.
We're not aware of it until 2 months, 3 months
And
down
look-
the road.
Yeah, so maybe at the time of,
On the violation of it,
yeah.
because that's what's gonna be documented.
Right, you need, whatever date's gonna be documented
Okay.
is what you need to,
so for 3 years from the issuance of a violation, must restore the land. Okay. So I added, the property will be barred from being developed for 3 years from the date of, from the issuance, from the date of, the date issuance of of the violation.
Is the document formally a notice of violation?
Yes.
Well,
Whatever
I
you're
think there's more
issuing.
than, so there's a notice of violation, but I think it's the actual citation. Or maybe yeah.
You can pick whichever you want, but
Yeah,
I'd say you don't issue a violation, you issue a notice of violation.
Okay,
when the
issue a
violation
notice, okay.
occurs.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
All right. I'll go at 4.9.
On 4.9 at the bottom, we talk about overlays, compliance, and we list out both rural Milton and State Route 9 overlay.
Right?
And since these are 2-acre parcels, I'm wondering, sort of goes back to a question we had earlier, but are there going to be any in overlay, the Route 9?
So
overlay?
there
Yes,
is,
there are.
there is some AG1 still in
there are.
the, but there's no R1 in the State Route 9. There's AG1, but I'll double check about,
Yeah,
there shouldn't be any.
5 acres, I thought, had some.
So 5 acre, but that's either, I think it's AG1 with, I'd have to look, but it's not R1.
It might have changed.
I'll have to look. I know it changed at some
Well,
point
there-
way long time ago, but I'll have to look. So we'll check that to see if
There are
it
a couple that
applies.
have ag uses down there.
I'm sorry?
There's some land with ag horses.
No, I know. There are some ag
So-
in State Route 9, like down Bethany for sure.
Well, in 5 acres, there are 2 properties.
Yeah. No, I know. It's either AG1 or R2 or
And maybe it
some-
got
Yeah.
recategorized.
I'll double check. We'll double check that.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
R2.
Go to R2. Okay.
Yeah, a question in that first paragraph, the second sentence. R2 district is intended to provide land areas devoted to very low density residential uses. And in the next one, which is on 416, which is R2A, we're talking about devoted to low density. So the difference here is 1 acre versus 2,700 square feet. I think, I don't know why we need to call out low density. Why can't we just say devoted to residential uses?
I mean, we could change it. It's just what we adopted for Fulton County, so.
Okay, I think it's kind of calling
Splitting hairs.
2,700 square feet a lot, which is less than half an acre about.
Right.
Low density that's not Milton, at least not where this is going to be.
So you're saying to keep the R2 at very low density?
Yeah, no, I'd say for all these references, just in the second sentences here, just say devoted to residential uses and get rid of the
Reference to
the
density.
very low density or very, very low density or whatever we have in
Because we
there.
have low density even for the
Very low.
9,000 square foot
That's right.
for-
It's ridiculous. So,
R4. So, yep.
okay.
All right, good call.
So do you want that also changed? I don't think we talked about it for R1. Let's see what it says.
I don't think it had that in there.
No, it's something
Well, it's
different.
funny. It doesn't say
Something
anything
different.
about
Yeah,
density.
no,
Yeah,
It
okay.
doesn't.
Yeah,
But as you go through the others.
Yeah, that
further
is
in the
weird.
deck, they always have this adjective. and I
Yeah.
just-
good point.
Silly.
Okay.
All right, any other R2, any questions or comments?
Again, the 3 or less.
This is gonna be the same.
Right, we'll repeat all the same things that we
Yes.
talked about. Yeah, these, pretty much.
And then over on 413, number 5 again, we need after the city issues instead of issuing.
Yeah, so we'll repeat all those from the previous one. Yeah. Should all be the same. And then I'll double check the R2, whether there's anything in State Route 9.
Does that bring us to R2A?
Yep.
Oh, I think I had a question more. Let me see, what was it? Double check.
It's a lot of this. It's all the same. Yep.
On see, it was on,
So we had I'm not sure what page we're on, but I think you jumped to R2A, but we had that discussion before on 414 on fencing, that the code requirements as far as, it can be this high and this color and this kind of wire is in the definitions, and it really needs to be in the code, not in the
Okay.
definitions,
Okay.
under equestrian fence.
mhm.
So,
Okay, so
and
the-
and that kind of goes like in all of them.
Right, the color, the,
Yeah,
Yeah,
the last section, this section, the next section.
so here's a confusion point for me, 414.6, that was what I wanted to just clarify. Where it says notwithstanding anything to the contractor in this subsection, agricultural operations may occur in the primary rural viewshed and secondary rural viewshed setbacks. Well, these are 1 acre lots. This seems, gonna have ag in a 1 acre lot?
well, they could be larger. I mean, R2 could be larger than 1 acre lots, but even so, there's another section that talks about basically grandfathering in agricultural uses, which I don't know. Or like the 1 acre lots, they said from 1990, anything that was in
Okay.
use
Okay.
from 1990. So there could be some
Okay,
agricultural.
but it would be more grandfathered in.
Yeah,
Correct?
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Because I was like,
And even
okay.
there's some R2A out there that are conditioned to 1 acre lots or larger. So. Good point.
Just clarifying.
Okay, so I think we're on, we'll do all the same changes and all that and double check. About 9. Okay, now we're in the R3. Yeah, still says low density, R3, okay.
Yeah,
I'm still on R2A.
Okay,
On page 418, within the rural viewshed standards, 41C, excuse me, B1C, we talk about septic systems here
uh-huh,
being placed in the rural viewshed.
yep.
But, I think I know you answered your question.
Yeah, there's still some R2A out there with some, that are 1 acre that are on septic, so.
Okay.
Yeah,
so it also, and this is probably the same answer, but I'm just going to clarify. For R2A and then going down, for the next ones, this one refers to, once again, the equestrian related structures and uses. And that's like a 0.6 acres. That seems small, but maybe they're there.
or the R2A,
Yeah,
yeah, that's
There
what I
are?
was saying. There's conditional R2A that are
Okay.
minimum 1 acre lots, which I think they used to do that. To be honest, in those situations, the rural viewshed probably isn't going to apply because we've done no R2A conditional zoning, so. I think we put it in I guess if anybody in the future wanted to do rezoning from AG1 to R2A with minimum 1 acre lots and to have the setbacks that way, that was years and years ago before we were a city, people would do that. So I guess it should still be in there just in case for some bizarre reason, somebody wants to rezone AG1 to R2A with at least 1 acre lots because you have to remember now, we don't have a CUP anymore. So actually there's probably a higher chance, not very much chance, but a higher chance now because there's no flexibility to go to a CUP where you kind of pick your setbacks. But if somebody really wanted to try to do alternative setbacks of, so the R2A setbacks are still 60-foot front, 15-foot side, 40-foot rear. So if they wanted those setbacks and they still wanted 1 acre, then they would come to us and ask for an R2A rezoning with minimum 1 acre lots. And then they'd still have to have a rural view shed.
Yeah, but I don't think you want them putting accessory structures because it's not going to work. I mean, and then you're talking, see, this is where you get into the whole variance discussion, right? These people go, well, yeah, I can put it in there. And I'm like, no, you can't. When,
The accessory structure?
yeah, it talks about having
Well, but you can't put accessory structures in the minimum yard, so you couldn't even put it,
why
okay, yeah,
it's-
so if it
well, it's
was
listed here.
40, then they could put it in the 20, but later on, it says you can't really put an accessory structure in the 20 because of the rural view shed. So it doesn't quite apply.
That's confusing.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to rezone to R2A, it says the rear setback is 40 feet, but actually it would be 60 feet because it's a double frontage. So if you have a lot that goes along, let's say, the lower part of Freemanville, and they go, I want to do R2A. So really, the only advantage they'd have is 15-foot side setbacks, because if you have a parallel street to an exterior street, it's a double frontage. So they still have to do 60 feet at R2A. So they still really can't put an accessory structure in the front yard. I know, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. And then I think we stop at R3. I don't think we have. Yeah. So R3, we stop with the rural view shed, so.
Yeah, and then, it'd be the same thing on that one with agricultural. And you said you thought there were some old ones grandfathered in that had,
Well, not R3, but R2A.
no, R2A.
Yeah. mhm.
Okay.
Yep. So R3. All the same changes in capitalization. Double check State Route 9 for R3. There might be, I don't know. Then we get to R3A. There's not anything else. I don't want to rush, but it's getting shorter each district.
Get rid of the low density.
I'm sorry.
Get rid of the low density.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
I
believe it
just saw-
says
I
low
just saw
density in
that.
R3A.
I just saw that one.
Less than a third of an acre.
Well, I guess it's all relative, right? Maybe in Fulton County, they thought that was low density, so.
Are you on R4?
Another low density at 8.
That's right,
R4.
R4. Get that out of there.
The 9,000.
So I think now we're going to flip from,
Wait, where are you now?
So do we, on the map, do we show where all the are, or do we have a table that shows us district and where they exist?
I would have to look at the map. I mean, there's a little bit of R3, R3A out there.
That would be helpful to have that, just so that you can look and say, here's where they're at in each character area, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
You're talking about in the document? Or are you talking about, it's on the GIS,
What?
right?
Yeah, it would be on GIS. I mean,
Then just a reference to it. I
I'm sorry.
guess. Just a reference to it so somebody can go and look
Well, I think that's why we were talking about hyperlinking the
Yeah, that's what,
zoning map.
that was my point. So it is on the GIS map. That was, I guess, my question. Okay.
Oh, yeah, it's on it, yeah.
So I could go on the GIS
When you
map
look
and
at
I'd
GIS, you
see,
can get
Color coded, I think.
yeah, the key, and then you just go and look. But you can also, when you're on GIS, sometimes the colors are hard to see the difference. So you click on the parcel and then you can look to see what it actually says in the description of the lot. It'll say R3 or R3A or T2 or T5. Once you click on the parcel, and then it'll bring up information and it'll say exactly what it is. If you're sometimes AG1 and R1 are very close color or whatever. So then you know for sure what it is. So.
okay.
Okay. So I'm on R4. All this. For A.
Low density.
I'm sorry?
Quarter of an acre.
Same thing.
Wait, it gets better.
Yeah, and it's like accessory structures on R4. I'm like, where?
Sorry about what?
Well, I'm just looking at the numbers going, where are you putting an accessory structure on 4-27?
Right, it has to be outside. Yeah, you're getting squeezed in.
Yeah,
now.
I'm like-
It gets smaller and smaller. Yeah.
That makes no
Yeah.
sense.
I mean, we don't really have a lot, I don't think we really have very much R4 or R4A. That's,
not.
it's more like Johns Creek and Sandy
Yeah.
Springs and stuff.
Okay.
And since we adopted form-based code, most of the residential, when you get the higher, there's no really lot of use for this, so. Okay, R4A, got rid of low density.
It's R5. Oh, wait, are you on R5?
Yep, we can be at R5. We can be.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, we're good.
She's like,
Anybody
"We
for
need
R7?
that."
You're looking for more.
Sold, going once.
Well, it is funny. It still says low density dwelling uses.
For 7,500 square foot lot.
I don't know. That's bizarre.
I mean, it just keeps
copy
on going.
paste.
It gets better with every page.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure we get them all.
Yeah. But then it starts getting a little more complicated because then it says intended to provide a transition between medium and moderate density dwelling areas and higher density residential areas
Yeah.
or non-resident. I mean, like,
Yeah, low is between medium and high. Got that note here.
Yes.
They'll have to get more creative in reworking that one.
yeah.
Are you on 431?
I'm sorry?
Are you on 431?
I'm on 431 now, whatever you say.
Terrific. Under building height, we reference section, or C section. We got two sections.
Mm-hmm.
We only need one of them.
Typo.
Oh, yeah. We're on 432.
Yep. Same paragraph about the
Low density.
low density and
Yeah,
Between
like
low and high
rework
and-
the paragraph.
okay.
It's all high density to us.
Mm-hmm.
1/10 of an acre. Or less.
Now, there ain't gonna be no, mountain. So I'm gonna go through and, R5A, it won't be in rural Milton. R5 won't be in rural Milton.
Oops, sorry.
R4A. Anyway, I'll go through that and then edit accordingly. So R6, two-family dwelling,
Same
going to
thing.
provide devoted to medium density, single family. So 6 are further into low and high density dwelling areas and between low density dwelling areas and non-residential areas. Ugh. Okay, we're going to redo that.
I assume that's duplex.
Not in rural Milton. Route 9. On TR.
Thought it was interesting too, that PR is to encourage home ownership, which I agree. I mean, it's probably,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I'm actually okay with what they say on it. I think because we tweaked it, because a few years ago, we took out single family. There used to be able to do single family in TR. Take out rural Milton.
So all the TR and that now falls under form-based, correct?
Well, you could still have TR in the areas that are State Route 9 overlay district along Bethany. So,
We've got to look
That-
at that.
I know, I want to do form-based code everywhere, but
Yeah,
but
because
right now we don't have that. So there are technically areas you could.
we wouldn't want this, and some of the numbers too are just not right. I mean, like, even for apartments, I'm like, where are you getting the square footage? Those are not even comparable to what's out there. I mean,
Right.
you wouldn't want that. I mean, for a lot of different reasons, which I want to go into, but I mean, some of it's like, okay, where are you getting those number? I mean, it's just old and doesn't make any sense anymore. Nobody's building like that, and you wouldn't want it anyways. So, yeah, that's a huge concern on some of this. Oh, just, this goes for TR. Just, like some of the way setbacks and then minimums on front and side and just all of that. Amount of open space is really not very high, which we definitely wouldn't want to do that. I mean, there's just a lot of things we wouldn't want to do here. Moving forward. I mean, what we have is what we have, but moving forward, we wouldn't want to do this.
Well, I think one of the projects, I believe, on the short-term work program is to look at I believe it is, because the State Route 9 overlay area and to kind of reevaluate that. I believe it's on one of the projects, so.
I was
in the comp
looking.
plan.
I see.
Anyway, that's something me personally would like to just get everything consistent with form-based code but to do a study for those areas that are left over
Yeah, I think Councilman Morrig, myself, and Councilman Jacobus and some others would like to be involved in that.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. So we'll check
Because
that.
we have
We'll
a
check to
burning.
see the programming of it, so. Okay, okay, medium density apartment.
Yeah, that medium density, when it's 14 units per acre,
Yep,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
I know. I mean, we won't, so
maximum.
the only times that this has happened is when the existing apartments needed to go from form-based code back to here for financial reasons when they went to sell, and the underwriters wanted it to make sure everything was right. It's, so under form-based code, if one building got destroyed, then they would have to rebuild the entire complex to form-based code. So they were like, they weren't willing to underwrite that. So we've had 2 or 3 instances of, we've gone back to rezone, let's say an R5, not R5, I'm sorry, the form-based code, T5, whatever it is. And then that didn't work. So we rezoned it to either medium density apartment, and most recently it was AL apartments, because that's over 14 units. Because there is a complex that over 14 units per acre, so. But we will never do apartments like out of this zoning ordinance, out of a A or AL for brand new.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think just a note what you're doing going forward, looking at those properties and who the owners are, because there are issues. Down the road, people sell, could be reuse, all of that. You've got to think who's the ownership, are they staying and being within code enforcement? Because you can look at some other cities, there are issues, and I won't get into details. But, we have them, and we've got to find a way to make it palatable, that it works for Milton. And so you don't get really bad ownership, which that is happening in cities. And bad stuff's happening. If you don't keep up with it, it could be very bad for the city. So,
Talking about code enforcement for multifamily or?
yes,
Yeah, okay.
I am.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
In the medium density on building height on page 440, it calls out 40 feet maximum. And code, I believe, says 45 feet or 3 stories, whichever is higher. And I was trying to reconcile that and didn't have time to do it.
okay, so I see under building height, it says 40 foot, and then there's a footnote of 1 and 2. And greater heights may be approved through a use permit or 2. No way, we have rural Milton in there. And section 628 and 8N for additional height limits. I need to look up that section. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think in the state, I don't remember which was read. But in any event, I think there's an inconsistency.
I'll just
between
double check.
what it is now and what's on the page here. And
Okay.
There's a similar one like that on page 442, where we're talking 60-foot maximum height, and 60 or four stories, whichever is higher. So I just want to make sure we're accurately capturing what the.
Okay.
On apartments, noticed in TR that it did specify that there must be 2 off-street parking places
Right.
per unit, but there's no parking
So that's going
described
to
for
be
the
in the
apartment.
off-street parking section.
It's in another,
Yeah.
okay, it's in
Yeah.
another section.
I think when we looked at TR a few years ago, we added that regulation in to add the, or it may have already been
Because
there,
that was
but.
actually within the principle. In other words, you got to have a garage, a two-car
Right,
garage.
right, but
So
then we're
this doesn't
saying,
specify, and it doesn't seem to specify where the parking's located.
for the
either,
TR.
with the apartments. Doesn't talk about parking at all, which it would be, does it have to be in the rear or the back or the front?
I don't think
Just
it.
doesn't mention
Yeah,
parking
it
at all.
doesn't specify, no. It just,
But it's all in the off-street parking.
right, so
code,
I would
which
have
is
to look
somewhere
to see the
else.
location. It might be different for A and AL as far as locations. I'd have to look to see what's
Or
on
covered parking.
off-street.
Probably covered parking.
Because it talks about coverage including parking, but it doesn't, but I think what she's saying is parking is described somewhere else.
4-42.
Yeah. Well, it's actually both. Medium density apartment and AL. Both, I think. No parking reference. Right. Don't see it.
Okay, so in the same, I don't know where it is exactly right now in UDC, but it'll be in there is, I think it's under development stuff. Acceptable locations for off-street parking. So they have single-family districts, and then they have TR, townhouse residential, and A, apartment dwelling. No off-street parking shall be permitted within the required setback for the front yard and side corner. Driveway shall not be located nearer than 10 feet to any side or rear property line. No off-street parking space shall be located within 25 feet of any side or rear property line adjacent to single family, nor within 10 feet of any other property line, blah, 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 blah. So,
Does it
They-
also specify how many spots?
now that, well, that's in a different table, and for apartments, it says,
Back to this idea of having it all, or at least putting a link so that if someone says, I want to build an apartment, oh, here it is. Well, what, you know, we might want to put the links there then,
yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
so that people can.
Sure, make it easy for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, that's weird.
Yeah. and
Included in basic parking requirement? That's bizarre.
Yeah, and the other thing I don't really see either, in addition to parking, is amenity or common area requirements for open space. I'm not seeing that anywhere. They mention on AL recreation area and facilities, but I don't really see anything on it.
It does say there's a 10% on AL, there's a 10% minimum for outdoor recreation on 441.
Check into it, because on there's a table with all the requirements, how many per use, and it says, doesn't give a number, and then it refers to something that I have no idea what it's talking about.
Yeah, if you could just make sure it's one of those, I want to put it in an apartment, and I can, a 10% has to be outdoor recreation, my parking has to be here, and I can find it all in one-stop shop. Unless we're intentionally trying to make it difficult to do.
Bad idea.
That'd be okay too, but.
But kind of the The spirit of this was to make it such that you looked at something and could find what you needed.
Right. Yeah. Parking,
And with
yeah.
the ability to link, that should be.
Yeah. It's interesting, in the A apartments,
here it
there is no discussion about outdoor recreation, just in AL.
Yep.
So it says, it's just, I'll have to do some research because it doesn't seem to make sense with what is on the table, so.
Make it make sense, Robin.
Okay, I'll try. I'm sorry.
Well, I think, I mean, it'd be nice to be consistent. I mean, the TR has a spot on 437 that, talks about open space or recreational facility requirements. I mean, I think that needs to be the same on apartments for sure. I mean,
Well, on the AL, it does say there has to be 10% of the lot outdoor recreation.
Yeah.
I guess that could be a pool, that could be open space, that could be basketball court,
yes, it
tennis court,
depends.
pickleball courts.
Showing your age.
I mean, I think, I think we can list it as a policy change because it would, I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's just would be adding something that we don't currently have. So we can put that on the policy change.
It does at least have the 10%
I probably
outdoor
do.
recreation.
So I think
do
that
more
on
than
the, so again, we wouldn't be, if anybody wanted to rezone, there's really nowhere to rezone it to apartments because we only have that small part that none of it would be compliant with it. So it's kind of a
That's true.
moot point. And then especially if we convert everything, but we can.
But let's say I buy one of those complexes and we're gonna change it.
So then you're gonna have to comply with the form-based code and it can't be developed in the same way as traditional garden apartments that most of the apartments are.
That are there.
So they're gonna have to comply. Anywhere that we would allow that kind of density is gonna be form-based code.
Right.
And so, and in those 2 or 3 instances where they went back to traditional zoning, there's a condition in there saying that if it would ever be redeveloped, it has to go back to form-based code.
Yeah, and I think what we would want to make sure if that happened, that there's, more open space requirements, all of those things get, more frontage, more all of that.
So in form-based code, anything between 4 and 10 acres have to have 5% open space, and then everything 10 acres and above has to have 10% open space. So if apartment or multifamily was developed in form-based code, they would have to comply with that. That's with the open space.
Okay. And that's of total acreage?
Yes.
Okay, so if,
So if you had 20 acres, then 10% of that is 2 acres would have to be open space. And it has to be accessible. It can't be just floodplain. It has to have frontage on a road. It's a lot more strict than what traditional zoning
Okay.
is, so.
Okay.
answers that question.
All the way to CUP now?
Wait, what page?
Are we on
44.
44, 43?
440. So, 442, and I know I've seen this table note kind of throughout. I just want to make sure that where it says the side yard, table note number 1, is that applicable? Like where the reference is townhouses?
So, 0 if units are attached, for example, townhomes on separate lots of record. So there's still gonna be, a building code separation. So 0 if units are attached, for example, townhomes on separate lots of, oh, I see what I mean. If you were gonna build townhomes using an AL apartment, so maybe sometimes multifamily developments will have apartments, but then sometimes they'll have townhomes on the same zoning of AL. And so they're saying, okay, if you're gonna build townhomes, then it's 0. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure, so you can do townhomes in an AL.
Yeah, mhm, yeah. Okay, so this CUP is, about a year ago, we kind of, it exists for the purposes of the existing CUPs, but nobody can rezone to CUP anymore.
So is this kind of mute because it can't be used in the future?
Right, but there are CUPs that
Exist today?
we need to have it still in the ordinance to make sure.
Yeah, the only thing I was thinking of that it might be good to worry about in retrospect is on 443, 414.3D, if the approval by the board differs in any way from what's depicted, because if they have to go back, which board?
Like city council?
Pardon?
Would that be city council?
Yeah, and I think we called them city council before.
And it is kind of weird that it said the board.
Mm-hmm.
We could say
City council.
whatever the reference for city council.
Mhm.
I'm just thinking that might, because that might be something where people would go back and say, oh, that applied retrospectively.
Yeah.
City
that's-
council, yeah, definitions.
Catch.
Council defined.
So same thing with NUP, that's no longer. But we do have, I think it's the subdivision across the street from Cambridge is NUP, but there's nothing new. Now we're on 5 business districts, which are pretty short.
Does anyone have a I couldn't find my copy of that.
Yeah.
Extra.
Find my copy of 5 either.
I looked
Lord, I
everywhere
missed
and I could not.
Have a electronic?
Oh. Yeah, I can't, my phone's too small to read that.
I'm sorry.
No, I had a copy and I can't find it.
Oh,
I
okay.
looked everywhere. I was like,
Same problem with me,
I looked
or
everywhere.
I
was
didn't
like,
look far enough.
couldn't find it.
I know I read it, but
I looked at it and I was like, where'd it go? My dog ate it.
All right.
O&I, office and institutional.
Questions or comments on,
Well, just that it doesn't seem likely that this will be in rural Milton overlay.
It wouldn't be because, well, there is some that's C1, but O&I, let me double check on that, but I don't think there is.
Okay.
Oh, there is at Birmingham Crossroads, but that's in the Crossroads overlay, but
The other is mixed use, the other corner is mixed.
there, oh, C1 and mixed use, but there, somebody could rezone down to, well, you wouldn't go down. Yeah, it probably wouldn't happen in O and I, but actually there is, actually, you know what? There's O and I on Providence Road in the rural Milton, yes.
Really?
Yeah, y'all, come on, where have you been? So,
Oh,
you know where the Union is, and there's
Hayfield.
Hayfield, and then the office building that looks like a house is O and I.
Oh,
That's the one on,
That's the school.
yeah, it's a school.
Okay. I didn't think about that.
Anyway,
Didn't even think
Okay.
that.
so if that one's okay.
Barry was selling that was O&I when he was selling that property.
Yeah,
'Cause think
I
he-
mean, so actually it used to be C1, and back in like 2010 or 08, it was kind of a mess, and we downzoned it. They added more square footage inside the building, and so they had to come back and do a rezoning. So we downzoned it from C1 to O and I, and he agreed to do that. And then there's a piece a little bit further down that's C1, but we put a bunch of conditions to it. It looks like a house, but it's C1, a couple lots down, so.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see what it says. So this is interesting. Am I missing 1, 2? Oh, I'm missing the page. Somehow I didn't get page 2. Because I was going to look at what the scope and intent was, but make sure they didn't say low density.
Didn't see that anywhere.
scope and intent for mixed use. Comment.
Yeah, okay.
Get there.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Are we at mixed use yet? And we can be at
Just,
mixed use.
Back on OI, similar to the discussion on apartments, a link to the parking section,
Okay.
Yes.
because I don't think it's discussed here.
So there will be location, there is location in the other section for parking. For off-street parking section, it speaks to location in O and I.
Yeah, but to have a link from O and
Oh,
I
yeah,
to
the
the
link,
parking,
yes.
just like we had.
Okay. Okay,
Okay, mixed use.
Use. In the scope and intent section, the second sentence, the mixed district is intended to encourage flexible, innovative, and creative concepts. ... After flexible and innovative, they have semicolons. I think they just want commas.
Mhm.
yeah. Want it as comma after innovative as well?
Yeah.
Instead, yeah.
Actually, I don't think you need it there.
So on 5.5A, why on mixed use would you exclude offices?
Why would you put what?
Oh,
Offices?
Oh, commercial, I see offices. Oh, it's commercial excluding offices. So what, like movie theater or something like that?
That's weird. Why would it say commercial excluding offices? Offices or civic? Because we have offices. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I was kind of confused reading it
Commercial.
myself.
Understand that. Oh, I know what it, okay, I didn't read the before, because in mix, it says there must be a residential component of single blah, 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 or any combination thereof, plus at least 2 of the following: commercial, excluding offices, offices, or civic uses. Still don't understand. Oh, I know what so sometimes people consider offices commercial. So what they want to make sure is they don't say, so that's what happens at the MIX at Birmingham Corners. So when we did the zoning modification to it, there's all the different, there's 2 commercial buildings, one's built, there'll be another one. So there's a residential component, there's single family. And then within those 2 buildings, they can have office, but they also have to have retail. Well, they have to have commercial. So the definition of commercial, which is typically some sort of retail. And they know that, the owner knows that they can't just have all offices and no commercial.
No retail.
No retail.
Service commercial.
Now we're on the C1.
Oh, Robin, in the section on the mix, I expected to see something on parking in here.
So again, the parking is going to be on the off-street parking section, which is, I think, under the development article. It'll say how many, it'll talk about the location. And then we calculate, okay, is it residential? And it requires 2 parking spaces. And then if it's retail, it's this. And if it's office, that.
Could we link?
Yeah, we'll link it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else on MIX? 1. Bizarre, you can put single family in C1, but okay. I don't know anybody.
That's interesting.
In the overlay compliance, should we add the Birmingham overlay?
I think that's a good idea. Well, yeah. We'll I think Birmingham is technically a subsection of rural, but we'll put that in just to be. So that would be for C1 and MIX and
But not office industrial.
or office and institutional. It could, I mean, somebody could rezone. I mean,
Yeah, the southwest corner could go OI,
yeah.
effectively is.
So, okay.
All right.
Wow.
Anybody have any? I just have one more question.
Sure.
First, I'd like to thank our audience member.
I know.
And I wonder, I have to ask Trey, what did she do that was so bad that you made her sit through this? What kind of punishment was this for her?
She had homework tonight.
Oh. Did you get all your homework done?
Well, I hope you're getting all kinds of credits. I hope you're getting all your civic credits.
Lots of
Watch
credits.
TV or something.
I will give you a civics merit badge for this.
Yes.
She's my sidekick. She's my best
Yeah.
helper.
You were a very good audience member. Thank you.
She was typing so much. I was like, she looks a little young to be the latest journalist.
Yeah.
There may or may not have been a couple of texts that says, "Are we getting close yet?" Won't disclose.
All right. Well, I'd be happy
Got a
to.
motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right.
Third.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That's
Thank you.
unanimous.
Okay, now are we off now?